Chapter 230. After leaving the foot of the mountain, Wang Chong wasn't in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, he wrote letters to his clan, big uncle, the Zhang clan, and Li Zhuxin. Li Zhuxin was escorting Zhang money into Jiaoji in secret, so it should be about time. Pu Lang Lang. Carrier pigeons flew above the Kunwa training camp, and it didn't take long for Wang Chong to receive a letter from his clan. The letter was from Wang Chong's mother, and she said that everything was fine at home. However, there was something unexpected. Wang Chong's little sister, Wang Xiaoyao, had actually gone off to learn martial arts. Furthermore, it was said that that person was Wang Chong's teacher. Furthermore, the guards in the clan had confirmed this as well. What's going on? Upon receiving the letter, Wang Chong was dumbfounded. Little sister? Master? He only had a single master, and that was the evil emperor. However, the matter regarding the evil emperor had always been a secret. Wang Chong had never mentioned it to his clan. In fact, his little sister and mother didn't even know of the existence of the evil emperor. What's going on? Why would little sister go to the spirit vein? Besides, doesn't she dislike cultivating? Why would she suddenly become so hardworking? Wang Chong was perplexed. He knew his little sister's personality very well. If she was willing to work hard, there wouldn't be a single scion in the capital who would be a match for her. Even Marchioness Yi wouldn't be a match for his little sister. However, all of this was just Wang Chong's fantastical imagination. His little sister's personality was one of eating and waiting for death. Of the two siblings, his little sister was the true profligate. But now, his little sister actually went off to cultivate? There aren't many people in the clan who know about teacher's matter. Furthermore, I've issued a gag order, so no one will tell her. Could it be that she accidentally overheard it? Or could it be that she noticed the guards and followed them to the spirit vein? Wang Chong also felt a headache when he thought of his little sister's capricious personality. There was a large-scale construction going on at the spiritual vein, and many craftsmen and guards had been sent there. With these guards coming and going, it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't attract his little sister's attention after a long time. That's fine too. My little sister's talent isn't bad, but it's a pity that her personality is too bad. I can't control her, but Master should be able to. It's good for her. Wang Chong's thoughts turned, and he suddenly laughed again. His little sister was born with incredible strength, and even though he was already an Origin Energy Tier 7 expert, he might not be a match for her. However, her master, the evil emperor, was different. With little sister's abilities, I'm afraid she won't be able to cause any waves in front of Master. Furthermore, the evil emperor is not some kind-looking good old man. He is a big shot of the evil path who has caused people to turn pale at the mere mention of his name. If my little sister tries to be mischievous in front of him, I'm afraid she's just asking for trouble. Putting aside the matter of his little sister, Wang Chong received the second letter from Uncle Li Lin. He had returned to the royal palace, and the imperial army was still heavily restricted. He couldn't possibly be away for long. As for the manor that Wang Chong wanted, he had already left it to someone else. In addition, he also mentioned the matter of Wang Chong's cousin, Wang Liang. After more than a month of preparation and spending a lot of money, they bought a few ships from the seafaring families. In addition, they worked overtime to build a new ship. A total of 4 large ships formed a fleet. Majestically, they finally set off from the southern sea. Wang Liang had made up his mind on this voyage. He had gathered a large number of sea maps, and he had even found 2 old navigators. Adding on the sailors, guards, and Hai Dongqing and Hai Zhan, who were in charge of communications, the group finally began to help Wang Chong search for the meteorite metal. The Wang clan had already dispatched quite a few experts. However, Uncle Li Lin was still worried. He had used his connections to find several retired experts of the Imperial Army to sneak into the group. Wang Liang had spent his entire life messing around, playing around with petty things and inventing little things that didn't really matter. Now that he had finally made up his mind to do something big, both Big Aunt and Uncle Li Lin were extremely supportive. In the letter, he expressed his gratitude to Wang Chong. Several 100,000 taels of gold had been given to Wang Liang, his cousin, without batting an eyelid. This was already the ultimate form of kinship. Big Aunt Wang Rushuang and Uncle Li Lin expressed their gratitude again and again. They truly had nothing to say about this nephew of theirs, Wang Chong. As for Wang Chong's search for the meteorite metal, the two of them didn't take it seriously. They both believed that Wang Chong had made up a reason to cheer Wang Liang up. This made the two of them feel even more grateful. I didn't lie a single word about this matter. The purpose of this voyage is really to search for those meteorites. After reading the letter from Big Aunt and Uncle Li Lin, a bizarre expression appeared on Wang Chong's face. Even though he had never been out to sea in his entire life, everything he said about the extraterrestrial meteoric iron was true, not a single word of falsehood. His wish to help cousin Wang Liang was true, and so was his wish to find the meteorite metal. Several 100,000 taels of gold was no laughing matter. Even though he might not care too much about it in the future, right now, Wang Chong wasn't at the point where he would treat 300,000 taels of gold lightly. Speaking of which, if cousin has already set out to sea, Mayasame Ayaka should be back soon. Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up, and his expression suddenly relaxed. Wang Chong's eyebrows rose, and his expression suddenly relaxed. If Mayasame Ayaka were here, his situation would be much better. If Mayasame Ayaka were here, his situation would be much better. At the very least, he would have someone he could rely on. Furthermore, Mayasame Ayaka was an assassin, and her senses were sharp. This way, she would be able to detect danger in advance. Now, it's up to the Zhang clan. Wang Chong thought. His collaboration with the Zhang clan involved the large mine, the Hyderabad ores, and the production of many logistics equipment. This was the project that Wang Chong was most concerned about. In Wang Chong's plans, the collaboration with the Zhang clan was of utmost importance. Flutter, flutter. A pigeon flew down from the roof. Around dusk, Wang Chong finally received a letter from the Zhang clan. The Zhang clan placed great importance on this important collaboration partner of Wang Chong. Thus, the one who replied to Wang Chong this time was the head of the Zhang clan. Everything is going smoothly. That's for the best. After reading the letter from the head of the Zhang clan, Wang Chong heaved a long sigh of relief. The head of the Zhang clan explained the progress of the past month in detail. With the support of Wang Chong's large iron ore vein, the Zhang clan's production and smelting swiftly caught up, and they even began to expand on a large scale. On the other hand, Wang Chong's 30-meter-long caltrops and strangely shaped metal plates had been developed from the very start. In a month's time, they had already forged more than 800 caltrops and 3,000 strangely shaped metal plates. Furthermore, all of them were forged from the top-notch metal that Wang Chong had requested, and every single one of them had been reinforced with more than 10 layers of toughening inscriptions. These things could definitely be considered as top-notch war machines. Given the Wang clan's capabilities, they would only be able to produce 200 to 300 of them in a month at most. But the Zhang clan was able to casually forge so many of them. Furthermore, this wasn't even when they were at full capacity. Furthermore, they had only mobilized a portion of the Zhang clan's manpower to forge for Wang Chong. Just this capability in itself was already far beyond that of an outsider clan. Without a doubt, the Zhang clan's blacksmithing prowess was on full display here. Other than that, according to the agreement with Wang Chong, the Zhang clan had already forged 8 Wuzi steel weapons. As for the final quenching and other procedures, they were all waiting for Wang Chong to take over. In the letter, the head of the Zhang clan also asked if Wang Chong was willing to take some time off to help with the final forging. Other than that, there was also a letter from Tuoba Guiyuan. In the letter, Tuoba Guiyuan also mentioned the matter of the Wuzi steel weapons. Wang Chong had been in the Kunwa training camp for more than a month, and this meant that the Imperial Army hadn't sold a single weapon for more than a month. It should be about time. After I master the sword chi of the life-slaying sword, it won't be too late for me to deal with the matters on both sides. Holding on to the letter, Wang Chong fell into deep thought. As for Li Zhuxin's letter, Wang Chong was the last one to receive it. Li Zhuxin escorted Zhang Munyan to Jiaoji. At the same time, he was tasked to protect Zhang Munyan from the shadows. No matter how far Jiaoji was, it should be around a month's time. In the letter, Li Zhuxin roughly explained the situation. Zhang Munyan had already found a foothold in Jiaoji, and with the help of the county magistrate dispatched by the Tang dynasty, Zhang Munian was able to obtain great convenience there. The rice in Jiaoji could be harvested thrice a year, and this made things much more convenient for Zhang Munian. Just as Wang Chong had expected, Zhang Munian immediately displayed great enthusiasm upon arriving at Jiaoji. He even busied himself day and night in the fields, searching for suitable, improved seeds. The house that Zhang Munian bought in Jiaoji was a place that Zhang Munian rarely stayed in. After a day, he would spend more than half of his time outside. Sometimes, he would even sleep on the stalks of the fields. Even in his dreams, Li Zhuxin could hear him talking about improved seeds. This left Li Zhuxin worried. Zhang Munian was already old, and he wasn't a youngster anymore. Thus, Li Zhuxin could only try to use his origin energy to massage the other party's muscles, bones, and meridians while he was asleep. In the letter, Li Zhuxin even advised Wang Chong to persuade Zhang Munian not to work so hard. Even though Li Zhuxin didn't say it explicitly, Wang Chong could sense the deep respect Li Zhuxin had for the old man whom Wang Chong had rescued from the imperial prison. In fact, he even expressed his intention to stay in Jiaoji to protect the old man. Food is the most important thing to the people. After such a long period of time, Wang Chong believed that Li Zhuxin should have understood that Zhang Munian's research would affect the lives of the people. Not only would it benefit the people, it would benefit the future as well. Thus, Wang Chong wasn't surprised by Li Zhuxin's intention to stay in Jiaoji at all. That's fine too. With Li Zhuxin guarding the area, there's no need to worry about the hybrid rice. After a moment of contemplation, Wang Chong nodded his head in agreement with Li Zhuxin's suggestion. Wang Chong's concern for Zhang Munian and his research wasn't any less than Li Zhuxin's, perhaps even exceeding it. Most of the time, wars occurred in places where the eyes couldn't see. To Wang Chong, Zhang Munian and his hybrid rice were such existences. In the future, the outcome of a war wouldn't be decided on the battlefield but these unseen and unnoticed corners. Zhang Munian was Wang Chong's secret weapon, an artifact that Wang Chong had left behind for the future. In the letter, Li Zhuxin also mentioned a piece of good news. After more than a decade of tireless searching, coupled with Zhang Munian's lifetime of farming experience, Zhang Munian had found the first male sterile plant in the farmland of Jiaoji. Li Zhuxin was using Zhang Munian's original words. He didn't know that these words were actually Wang Chong's masterpiece. Even though the discovery of the male sterile plant wasn't much, it was still far from reaching the hybrid rice. However, to Wang Chong, this was already a huge improvement. Since he was able to find the male sterile plant, the others shouldn't be too far away. Everything is finally on track. Chapter 231. Everything was on the right track. As for what happened next, there was no need for Wang Chong to worry too much about it. Once the snowball started rolling, it would grow thicker and thicker with each passing moment. And for Wang Chong, even though the snowball that he had stacked earlier on hadn't started growing, it was already starting to roll. After meeting with Zhao Jingdian and Wei Hao a few times, Wang Chong quickly returned to his cultivation. Days passed, and Wang Chong improved with each passing day. 8 days later, light surged in the dark chamber. Suddenly, with a chi sound, a brilliant radiance shot out from the tip of Wang Chong's blunt sword. This radiance was as thin as a thread, but it was incredibly bright. At first glance, it was so blinding that one couldn't even open one's eyes. Furthermore, the radiance was extremely condensed, and it didn't weaken in the slightest even after extending for more than a dozen zhang. The radiance swiftly dissipated into nothingness upon coming into contact with the wall a dozen zhang away. This is sword qi. This is great. Upon seeing this radiance, Wang Chong felt incomparably agitated. After studying and comprehending it for over 10 days, he'd finally compressed the vital energy in his body to the limit and condensed the strand of swift and fierce sword qi that was fine like a gossamer. It might have seemed as thin as a thread, but it was actually the result of compressing a large amount of origin energy in Wang Chong's body. After so many days, I finally managed to condense sword qi. Wang Chong's heart leaped in excitement. Sword qi was also a form of origin energy, but it was compressed to its limits. Because of this, The might of a sword Dao expert was so powerful. At this moment, Wang Chong felt that all his efforts had paid off. Just as he was deep in thought, Wang Chong suddenly felt a bizarre ray of light shooting in. This ray of light didn't come from the door or anywhere else. Instead, it came from the wall in front of him. The place where Wang Chong cultivated was a dark chamber, and there wasn't a single speck of light in it. This was also to get used to the practice of hearing and intuition in Sword Dao. Therefore, when a ray of light shone into the room, it would feel very strange. Strange? I remember there was no light here before. Wang Chong walked in from the ground and walked in the direction of the light. On the wall, about a meter above the ground, there was a small hole that could be vaguely seen. That strange light shone in from this hole. At first, Wang Chong didn't notice it. He even stretched out a finger to touch the wall. But soon Wang Chong realized it. Wasn't this hole the place where the sword energy from the hit? What's going on? Could it be that the sword chi I shot out just now even pierced through the walls here? Wang Chong was dumbstruck, his entire body frozen. The surrounding walls of the training room he was in were not made of wood, but of steel. It was very difficult to build a room made of steel like this, so the Kunwa training camp only had it on the main peak. Moreover, the training room Wang Chong chose was a very private one, designed for martial artists of rank 7 and above. Wang Chong had checked before. The metal wall here was at least a foot thick. Steel as thick as this could not be easily scratched even by a broadsword. Even if it was a woozy steel weapon, it would be very difficult to damage such a thick weapon. But on this wall, there was actually a hair-thin hole. Was the sword energy of the so sharp? Wang Chong suddenly raised the blunt iron sword in his hand, his eyes twitching wildly. Although he was the one who shot it, even Wang Chong couldn't believe it. Swoosh! Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, Wang Chong suddenly raised his head. Without thinking, he swung his sword at the wall in front of him again. Swoosh! A burning, dazzling and hair-thin ray of light shot out again, disappearing into the thick steel wall. Wang Chong waited for a while, but the room was dark. Apart from the ray of light, there was nothing else. Could it be that I guessed wrong? This hole is not my sword energy? Taken aback, Wang Chong suddenly felt a little uncertain. Could it be that this was all a coincidence? While he was deep in thought, suddenly, a strand of light, as thin as a strand of hair, penetrated the wall and shone into the room. Two tiny rays of light, one on the left and one on the right, were extremely eye-catching. That's right. It was really the result of the sword energy of massacre. As this thought flashed through his mind, Wang Chong stared in a daze at the two tiny rays of light shining through the wall, not even daring to believe that they were his handiwork. I didn't expect Senior Su's sword energy of massacre to be so sharp. I've only cultivated the first strand of the most basic sword energy, but I can already penetrate a steel wall that's a foot thick. If I cultivate it to the extreme, I don't know how terrifying it will be. No wonder Senior Su could single-handedly kill tens of thousands of foreign steel cavalry in the capital. Wang Chong took a deep breath, his heart shivering. This was the first time he experienced the terror of the art of god and demon obliteration. Moreover, it wasn't So Young-sun who told him about it, but Wang Chong himself comprehended it. In that instant, Wang Chong's mind was filled with thoughts, and he suddenly remembered many things from the past. The foreign steel cavalry back then not only had great strength, but they also had a terrifying defense. Their bodies were very dense, strong, and tough, and they had almost no weaknesses. Many fatal injuries had no effect on them. Many powerful techniques used by humans on the battlefield had no effect on them. Even if they were pierced by swords and sabers, they wouldn't be much of a hindrance. Many powerful killing techniques would be greatly reduced when used by them. The offensive and defensive strength of both sides were on completely different levels. Because of this, humans suffered heavy casualties in their battles against them. Many famous foreign armies of the Tang dynasty and the foreign steel cavalry were annihilated right in front of them. Blood and death created the reputation of these foreign steel cavalry. But their strength was even more terrifying than their reputation. On the battlefield, humans were almost completely unable to fight back. Wang Chong had seen 1,000-strong foreign steel cavalry sweep through a human army of nearly 10,000 with his own eyes. Even the army that Wang Chong had trained had been the result of a collective effort, the combined strength of all the human race. That was the last of humanity's strength. But it was under such circumstances that So Young-sun was able to single-handedly kill nearly 10,000 foreign steel cavalry. When Wang Chong heard of this before, he only felt that So Young-sun was very powerful. But he didn't know just how powerful he was. He had been in contact with So Young-sun for more than 3 months, and So Young-sun had never displayed his martial arts in front of him. Even when they parted at the end, he only used the air absorption palm, which wasn't anything special. So in their daily interactions, Wang Chong's understanding of So Young-sun was that this was a stubborn, persistent, isolated old man who was immersed in the past and sorrow, and lived an unhappy life. But as for his strength, Wang Chong couldn't estimate it. This was the first time Wang Chong had a vague understanding of So Young-sun and the tip of the iceberg of the art of god and demon obliteration. Those foreign cavalry in the capital probably died extremely miserable deaths, Wang Chong said with a sigh. Wang Chong thought. Given the might of the art of god and demon obliteration, Wang Chong was sure that those foreign steel cavalry back then must have been riddled with holes. Under such circumstances, no matter how resilient and compact one's body was, death was the only outcome for them. The art of god and demon obliteration is indeed one of the strongest sword arts in the Central Plains. Given the might of this sword chi, even if I were to face a true martial realm expert, I am confident that I can pierce through the stellar energy around their body and threaten their body. At this point, Wang Chong's heart calmed down, and he was even more certain that the art of god and demon obliteration that So Young-sun gave him was the basic version of the art of god and demon obliteration. This secret art was much more powerful than Wang Chong had imagined. With this secret art, Wang Chong was even more confident that he could carry out his plans. In the next few days, Wang Chong did nothing but cultivate in the dark room, nurturing his sword chi step by step. The cultivation of the art of god and demon obliteration was completely different from ordinary martial arts. To cultivate this kind of top-notch sword art, the first step was to circulate the origin chi in one's meridians and compress it step by step, turning it from thick to thin, becoming denser and denser. When it was compressed to the extreme, when there was only a sliver left, the origin chi would turn into sword chi. This process was extremely difficult to cultivate. But the next step was the most important. When the vital energy was compressed to the extreme and finally turned into sword chi that was as thin as a gossamer, what he had to do next was to do the opposite. He had to constantly nurture the sword intent and sword chi, and then grow the thin sword chi step by step, from thin to thick, and then to thicker and stronger sword chi step by step. This step was even more difficult to cultivate. The nurturing of sword intent had to be done at all times, not the slightest bit careless. As time slowly passed, Wang Chong's sword intent improved every day. From the thin strand at the beginning, it slowly doubled in size, and then slowly increased. Even though the cultivation of sword chi was different from the growth of one's inner strength, Wang Chong could still sense that his strength was growing by the day. When Wang Chong's sword chi of massacre condensed to the thickness of a chopstick, Wang Chong could clearly sense that the growth of his sword chi had slowed down. Wang Chong was no stranger to this feeling. It was a bottleneck. It's about time. It's probably due to my cultivation realm restricting my cultivation. Given my origin energy tier 7 cultivation, I can only cultivate the sword chi of massacre to this level. If I want to advance further, I'll probably have to wait until I reach origin energy tier 8. In the dark room, with a thought, Wang Chong shot out a surge of sword chi from his fingertip. Different from before, this surge of sword chi wasn't 10 centimeters long but around 3 chi. Its radiance was even more blinding than the sun, and it flickered at the tip of the sword. Only Wang Chong and his sword chi of massacre were capable of such a feat. For a mere origin energy realm cultivator to possess such powerful sword chi, this was something only Wang Chong and his sword chi of massacre were capable of. Wang Chong brandished his sword, and the sword chi sliced across the wall lightly. Immediately, a piece of steel the size of tofu was scraped off from the wall as though it was nothing. The entire process was unimaginably easy. I'm almost done with my cultivation. It's about time for me to head out. After spending another 2 days in the dark room, Wang Chong finally walked out. And it was at this moment that Wang Chong finally welcomed his guest. After more than 20 days of delay, the future imperial uncle Yang Zhao finally couldn't sit still any longer. Instead of looking for Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen, he ran to the Kunwa training camp to look for Wang Chong. The rules of Kunwa training camp were extremely strict. Even big uncle Wang Zhen had to contact Wang Chong via messenger pigeon if he wished to meet Wang Chong. After which, he had to wait outside the training camp before he could meet Wang Chong. However, Yang Zhao was different. Chapter 232. On the summit of Kunwa Mountain, Yang Zhao was wearing a black silk hat and a plain white robe. His head was held high and his chest was puffed out. He was surrounded by 4 burly and well-built guards of the Jinwu Guards, giving off an extraordinary aura. A cool breeze blew on the summit. Yang Zhao had his hands behind his back and his robe fluttered along with the mountain breeze, giving him an outstanding appearance. It had only been a few months since he entered the capital, but Yang Zhao had already imitated that official's demeanor to a great degree. If one didn't know better, they would have already felt reverence for Yang Zhao and regarded him as a peerless scholar just by looking at his back and appearance. Wang Chong knew about Yang Zhao's background and had also seen him in dire straits. But even so, every time he saw Yang Zhao, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh in admiration. He also felt some admiration for this future imperial uncle. Putting aside what talent he had to learn, Yang Zhao's studious attitude was truly admirable. Not everyone was as diligent as Yang Zhao and could imitate the demeanor of a great scholar in just 2 to 3 months. Rumor had it that this future imperial uncle was already on good terms with some of the ministers in the imperial court. For a person to be so diligent, even if he's a gambling addict, he's still a genius. Wang Chong sighed inwardly. It wasn't without reason that Yang Zhao was able to climb to such a high position despite his humble origins. In Wang Chong's view, the scene before him was enough to explain a lot of things. Calming himself down, Wang Chong was soon led down by an instructor. Right now, Yang Zhao was patrolling on behalf of the heavens. If Yang Zhao wanted to see him, Wang Chong really couldn't refuse. Buzz! Standing on a protruding rock, Yang Zhao heard the commotion behind him and turned around. Ha, Wang Chong, long time no see. Seeing Wang Chong, Yang Zhao's eyebrows relaxed, and he beamed with joy. He jumped down from the protruding rock and strode over with an enthusiastic look on his face. Lord Yang. Wang Chong also greeted him with a smile. Tikiste, Wang Chong, I haven't seen you for more than a month, but you look very different this time. Yang Zhao sized up Wang Chong, and he immediately noticed the change in Wang Chong's temperament. He looked surprised. It seems that this Kunwa training camp is really good at training people. I almost don't recognize you anymore. Yang Zhao was right. Although the Wang Chong of the past was capable, he still gave people the feeling that he was a child who didn't have enough experience. But the current Wang Chong was like an unsheathed sword that had been tempered and sharpened, revealing its sharpness. His temperament had also become extremely fierce, and no one dared to underestimate him. No wonder Yang Zhao was surprised that such a big change could happen in just a month and a half. Lord Yang, you flatter me. I'm still me. There's no change. Wang Chong denied it with a smile. He knew very well that this was not the power of the Kunwa training camp at all, but the change caused by the influence of the sword chi and sword will of slaughter, so Yongsun's life-killing sword. But Wang Chong would not reveal this in front of Yang Zhao. Hee, of course you can't see it, but we can see it. Yang Zhao looked at Wang Chong with a strange look in his eyes. Well, that's enough. You can leave now. I would like to take a walk with young Master Wang. Yang Zhao suddenly walked past Wang Chong and spoke to the instructor who informed Wang Chong. Then, he waved his hands and dismissed the 4 chamberlains of imperial insignia. Hee, little brother, are you interested in taking a walk with me? When there was no one around, Yang Zhao suddenly smiled and extended his palm to Wang Chong. If anyone else were here, they would surely be shocked. To think that the cousin of consort Taizhen would become sworn brothers with the son of Duke Jiao. Hee, big brother, please lead the way. Hearing the change in Yang Zhao's manner of address, Wang Chong immediately understood and followed behind. The two of them walked side by side, one on the left and the other on the right. Big brother, is there anything you need? Wang Chong went straight to the point. Let's talk about it. Yang Zhao purposely put on a hesitant expression, as if he found it hard to speak. To tell you the truth, I have come to the Kunwu training camp with a request. Wang Chong looked at Wang Chong doubtfully, but he was chuckling inside. Most likely, Yang Zhao didn't know that big uncle Wang Zhen was already here. Even though Wang Chong didn't pay much attention to the affairs of the royal court, he knew that big uncle Wang Zhen was right. The matter of Zhangqiu Jianxiong entering the royal court had probably reached a critical juncture. Or rather, this matter seemed to be a little uncertain at the moment. The matter of Zhangqiu Jianxiong entering the great court had probably reached a critical juncture. Or rather, this matter seemed a little uncertain right now. The matter of Zhangqiu Jianxiong entering the royal court had probably reached a critical juncture. Looks like Yang Zhao is even more anxious than Zhangqiu Jianxiong on this matter. Wang Chong thought. I don't know. Second brother doesn't pay much attention to the royal court. The matter of Southern Protector General Zhangqiu Jianxiong entering the royal court has already caused a huge uproar in the royal court. In truth, back when I was in Jianan, Lord Zhangqiu helped me a lot. If not for him, Yang Zhao would have already starved to death on the road to Jianan Pass. This time, Lord Zhangqiu wishes to enter the Bureau of Military Personnel. Yang Zhao thinks that one mustn't forget one's roots. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Lord Zhangqiu once helped me and saved my life, so this time, no matter what, I hope to fulfill this dream of his. Yang Zhao said earnestly. Those who didn't know the truth might really think that Yang Zhao was doing this to repay a debt of gratitude. However, Wang Chong already knew the ins and outs of this matter. Regardless of what Yang Zhao's reason was, there was one thing that was certain. Yang Zhao wanted to insert Zhangqiu Jianxiong into the royal court so as to pave the way for him to ascend to the throne. Working hard for Zhangqiu Jianxiong was ultimately for himself. Similarly, Consort Taizhen shared the same sentiments behind this matter. It was too lonely in the royal court, especially after experiencing the Consort Taizhen incident and being ostracized by the other officials. The fervor in Consort Taizhen's heart was probably no less than Zhangqiu Jianxiong's. Big brother, what do you wish for me to do? Wang Chong flung his sleeves lightly as he walked down the spine of Kunwu Mountain together with Yang Zhao. Second brother, I know that your big uncle is an influential official in the royal court, and the Wang clan wields great influence in the royal court. I know that this request of mine is a little overboard, but I am indebted to Lord Zhangqiu. Can I ask your big uncle to... As Yang Zhao spoke, he found it hard to continue. Of course. Before Yang Zhao could finish his words, Wang Chong suddenly burst into laughter and said resolutely. Yang Zhao was stunned. Why you can? Second brother, you don't even know what I am talking about. Hee, didn't you want me to ask my big uncle to support Lord Zhangqiu Jianxiong in the royal court? Wang Chong said. Yang Zhao stared at Wang Chong in disbelief, completely dumbfounded. It wasn't easy to convince Wang Chong to persuade his big uncle to support Zhangqiu Jianxiong. After all, this request was indeed a little overboard. In his heart, Yang Zhao had already made all sorts of preparations. Just that, he didn't expect that none of the methods that Yang Zhao had prepared would be useful. Before he could even finish his words, Wang Chong had already agreed to it. The surprise came so quickly that Yang Zhao was caught off guard. Second brother, are you really going to agree to it? Yang Zhao was still in disbelief, and he couldn't help but feel anxious. Wang Chong nodded. Big uncle had already told him that Yang Zhao would come to look for him. Since Zhangqiu Jianxiong was going to enter the capital sooner or later, it was best for him to agree to it so that Zhangqiu Jianxiong wouldn't owe him a huge debt of gratitude. Since Big Brother has spoken, if there's a need, I can make a trip down the mountain to look for my big uncle personally. Wang Chong said. That's great. Second brother, allow me to thank you on behalf of Lord Zhangqiu. Yang Zhao was overjoyed. He knew of Wang Chong's current standing in the Wang clan. On the day Wang Chong was released from prison, even the king of Song went to his residence to welcome him. From this, one could imagine how high Wang Chong's standing was. If Wang Chong were to appear, the chances of this matter succeeding would be much higher. Second brother, if this matter succeeds and Lord Zhangqiu becomes the Minister of War, I'll definitely introduce him to you. I'll have him thank you properly. Yang Zhao said happily. He had already contacted quite a few people in the royal court, but it was a pity that none of them dared to step forward. For the time being, he was completely helpless. If the Wang clan and Wang Chong's big uncle were to make a call, given the Wang clan's influence and consort Taijin's influence, there was a high chance that this matter would succeed. This matter concerned his future. Yang Zhao had no choice but to get acquainted with it. We'll talk about this matter after Lord Zhangqiu succeeds. Right, big brother, you came from the south. I would like to ask if you know a Lord Zhang Wentua? Wang Chong asked casually, but his eyes were staring intently at Yang Zhao. It was clear that he was very concerned about this matter. Jiannan Commandery Chief Zhang Wentua? Yang Zhao asked in astonishment. Despite the short name, Wang Chong's heart jolted in shock. Zhang Wentua. To think that Yang Zhao would really be acquainted with Zhang Wentua from the south. In a flash, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, countless thoughts flitting through it. Second brother, why would you ask this question? Could it be that your Wang clan is acquainted with Zhang Wentua? Yang Zhao's astonished voice sounded in Wang Chong's ears. Yang Zhao was indeed perplexed. Zhang Wentua was the commandery chief of Jiannan. Even though it sounded like a significant position, it was just a title given to him in name. In truth, his authority wasn't too great. In the Tang dynasty, there were at least 100 commanders-in-chief like Zhang Wentua. In the Tang dynasty, there were only a handful of people who knew of the name Zhang Wentua. Yang Zhao was perplexed as to why Wang Chong would be associated with such a person. He had stayed in Jiannan before. Even so, he didn't pay much attention to this Jiannan commandery chief. However, as a scion of the capital, Wang Chong had never stepped out of the borders of the capital. It was truly perplexing that he would know of a mere commandery chief by the borders. Wang Chong didn't say a word. He could see Yang Zhao's expression clearly. Wang Chong knew what Wang Chong was thinking. The current Zhang Wentua was indeed an unknown figure, but Wang Chong knew that his name would resound across the entire Middle Earth in the future, influencing the fate of the entire Tang dynasty. On top of that, the lives of the 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty would be tied together. This unknown Zhang Wentua would become an existence that no one could ignore in 2 years' time. Chapter 233. I've only heard of Prefect Zhang's name from my family. Right? I heard that Prefect Zhang is a womanizer? Wang Chong feigned nonchalance. Brother, where did you hear that from? Hearing Wang Chong's comical words, Yang Zhao couldn't help but burst into laughter. Zhang Wentua is a military general, and I've only seen him from afar once. He's an extremely courageous man. I've never seen him enter a brothel or a brothel before. Many people laugh at him, saying that he's a monk. However, I did hear from Lord Zhangqiu that Prefect Zhang is a henpecked husband. Second younger brother, where did you hear such a ridiculous thing? Henpecked husband? A dark glint flashed across Wang Chong's eyes. I get it now. Brother, you're not young anymore. You should know how it feels to be a woman now. Don't worry, when you're free, I'll bring you to the brothel in the capital after you leave the Kunwa training camp. Yang Zhao spoke as though he was a seasoned veteran, and Wang Chong felt a headache coming on. This wasn't the reason why he asked about Zhang Wentua. Yang Zhao had clearly misunderstood his intentions. Wang Chong hurriedly interjected to divert Yang Zhao's attention. After which, he probed about Jiannan Prefect Zhang Wentua before finding an excuse to send Yang Zhao back. Zhang Wentua is a henpecked husband? What's going on? After Yang Zhao left, Wang Chong sat on a boulder at the foot of the mountain and fell into deep thought. Even before Yang Zhao left, he had taken Wang Chong's final question as a joke. If he knew what he was thinking and why he would ask about Zhang Wentua, Wang Chong dared to bet that Yang Zhao would be dumbfounded. In truth, when that matter broke out in the future, Wang Chong was sure that when Yang Zhao recalled today's conversation, he would definitely be greatly shocked. Wang Chong didn't ask about Zhang Wentuo casually. The Battle of Nanzhao. This was the real reason why Wang Chong asked about this matter. In the future, the Great Tang would face an enormous and bitter war in the southeast. In the Great Tang's history of invincibility, this was its first and most grievous defeat. 180,000 elite Tang soldiers, as well as countless officers and officers, lay forever on the battlefield of the Great Tang's southeast, their blood flowing in rivers as they died. This defeat shook the entire Central Plains, and it would affect the fate of the Tang dynasty for decades to come. The Annan Protectorate Manor, which Zhangqiu Jianxiong had guarded for decades, was disbanded, and the 5 great protectorates were reduced to the 4 great protectorates. The southern edge of the empire lost its barrier, and countless civilians were affected. The casualties numbered in the millions. And all of this, if one were to look into it, was because of a man and 2 women. The man was the Jiannan commander-in-chief, Zhang Wentuo, and the 2 women. Those 2 women weren't ordinary women. They were the beautiful wife and daughter of the king of Mengshi Zhao, Jelifeng. No one witnessed the entire incident, and that was because it was impossible for such a thing to happen. Wang Chong only knew the truth that he was familiar with later on. Zhang Wentuo was lustful and lustful by nature. In the vassal state of the Tang dynasty, the wife and daughter of the king of Mengshi Zhao, Jelifeng, found an opportunity to pay a visit to the capital, and they were raped and murdered in the city lord manor. When Jelifeng received the news, he flew into a rage and led an army to attack the Tang dynasty to exact vengeance for his wife and daughter. In the end, Zhang Wentuo also died in this war. Zhang Wentuo was lustful and humiliated the wife and daughter of the king of Mengshi Zhao, Jelifeng. This led to the war, and 180,000 elite Tang dynasty soldiers were buried in the southeast. Such a heinous crime wasn't to be regretted even if he died. After the Battle of Nanzhao, the anger of the entire nation was focused on Zhang Wentuo. There were even people who dug up Zhang Wentuo's corpse and whipped it to vent their anger. After that war, Zhang Wentuo was condemned by the entire nation. Wang Chong didn't know any Zhang Wentuo. Jiannan was simply too far away, and Zhang Wentuo was simply too low profile. Even someone like Yang Zhao, who had spent time in Jiannan, didn't know much about Zhang Wentuo, let alone others. However, Wang Chong still felt that there was something fishy about the Jiannan incident that led to the Battle of Nanzhao. The reason was simple. Zhang Wentuo had committed suicide. Jelifeng had mobilized his army to attack the city. As the governor of Jiannan, Zhang Wentuo knew that he had committed a grave sin. Thus, he didn't choose to retreat or escape. Instead, he chose to commit suicide to atone for his crimes. This was something that even Jelifeng couldn't deny. No one knew who was in the right and who was in the wrong back then. This was because everything had happened in the city lord manor. If Zhang Wentuo had really abducted Jelifeng's wife and daughter, then he would definitely conceal such a secretive matter from the public, not letting outsiders know about it. Other than those close to him, it was impossible for anyone else to know about it. This included Zhangqiu Jianxiong, who Yang Zhao said knew him very well. However, in that battle, everyone close to Zhang Wentuo, including himself, had died. As such, the truth would never be known. And all of the truth had come from Jelifeng's mouth alone. However, Jelifeng wasn't in the city during that incident. How could he, as the emperor of Mengshi Zhao, know about the affairs of the Tang dynasty? No one was able to verify this matter back then, needless to say, in the future. However, there was one thing that Wang Chong was certain of. It was impossible for a lustful person to commit suicide for his country. He might have been killed by those close to him, or he might have been killed by his enemies during the war, but it was impossible for him to commit suicide. As the saying goes, lust blinds one's mind. Those who would commit such acts would likely choose to retreat or escape, but it was impossible for them to commit suicide. A person who indulged in lust would never have the courage to commit suicide. Furthermore, Yang Zhao had also said that Zhang Wentuo was a henpecked man who didn't like lust, and he would never go to a brothel. On this point, Wang Chong trusted him completely. However, Jelifeng's wife and daughter had indeed died in Jiannan, and this was something that couldn't be denied. Jelifeng was the leader of a generation. Although he was also extremely ambitious, he wouldn't joke about being cuckolded. The entire Jianan incident was shrouded in mystery, and there were too many inconsistencies and contradictions in it. In his previous life, this was destined to be a mystery that no one could unravel. But in this life, no matter what, Wang Chong was determined to unravel this mystery. This was because Wang Chong knew that Zhang Wentua's life wasn't at stake alone, but the lives of millions of soldiers and civilians of the Tang dynasty, as well as every single person living in the Central Plains. If Zhangqiu Jianqiong were to become the ruler of the Central Plains, it would only be a matter of time before he enters the capital. As the Jianan commander-in-chief, Zhang Wentua would have to enter the capital once every 3 years to report on his duties. This year's transfer of the Southern Protector General is a huge matter. Even if it wasn't the 3-year deadline, Zhang Wentua would still have to enter the capital once to be questioned by the Holy Emperor and the royal court. When Zhang Wentua enters the capital, at that time, whether it is true or false, whether Zhang Wentua is truly loyal to the emperor and his country and has suffered an injustice, or whether he is a man with 2 faces, a man who appears to be loyal and treacherous, a treacherous hero with great forbearance, at that time we will know. Wang Chong raised his head to look at the clouds in the sky, and many thoughts were running through his mind. Zhang Wentua was a commander-in-chief of the Tang dynasty, and not everyone would have the opportunity to come into contact with him. However, Wang Chong and the Wang clan would definitely have the opportunity to do so. Zhang Wentua's arrival in the capital will take at least 2 months. There's no need to rush into this matter. After a moment of contemplation, Wang Chong left the foot of the mountain. Right now, he had another important matter to attend to. Gongzi! At the foot of the mountain, in a low-lying area filled with lush trees, Wang Chong saw Zhuang Jingping and Qi Siwei. When the 2 of them saw Wang Chong, they could vaguely sense the sword qi in his body, and a sliver of fear flashed through their eyes. Zhuang Jingping, Qi Siwei, have you brought the experts from your clans? Wang Chong said. They have long been here. The 2 of them nodded. They had rushed over upon receiving Wang Chong's message. Upon hearing that Wang Chong wanted to mobilize the experts from the Zhuang and Qi clans, how could they dare to delay? Yi! 2 sharp cries sounded, and in an instant, the earth trembled and dust billowed. The sound of galloping horses could be heard from the forest in the distance. Wherever the galloping horses passed, the trees would creak loudly. It was as though a massive beast was charging out of the forest. Neigh! A long neigh could be heard, and in the blink of an eye, a monstrous and huge horse could be seen leaping out of the forest. The huge war horse galloped over 10 zhang away, flying high above everyone's heads. At that moment, Wang Chong could clearly see a tall and muscular heavy-armored knight on the back of the horse. His eyes were filled with disdain, and his aura was astonishing. That fluttering cape seemed to cover the entire sky. Bang! The war horse landed on all 4s, and with a turn, it landed behind Wang Chong and the others. Beneath the war horse, a brilliant light burst forth. In an instant, a dazzling blue halo of thorns rippled out from the warhorse's hooves and spread out in all directions. Young master! The heavy-armored knight from the Zhuang clan sat on top of the horse, looking straight ahead. His entire body was emitting a heavy aura that was as heavy as steel. Although Wang Chong didn't know his background, he could feel a strong sense of threat from him. Without a doubt, this person was very powerful. The Zhuang clan's iron cavalry is indeed worthy of its name. Wang Chong looked at the heavy-armored knight with a strange look in his eyes. The number of iron cavalry in the Zhuang clan was limited. When he became the commander of the Zhuang clan, most of the iron cavalry in the Zhuang clan had died on the battlefield. Therefore, Wang Chong didn't have the chance to meet the famous iron cavalry of the Zhuang clan. This was the first time he saw the famous iron cavalry of the Zhuang clan. The war horse of the Zhuang clan was especially strong and tall. It was a head taller than ordinary war horses. Moreover, its bones and muscles were especially strong and powerful. The most obvious ones were its 4 limbs and neck. The muscles were bulging and they were full of power. Chapter 234. Chapter 335. Good steeds. Wang Chong was overjoyed. As a cavalryman, half of their strength came from their steeds. As a former Grand Marshal of the Central Plains, Wang Chong was quite fond of these steel steeds. Steeds, armor, and knights all require special training. The Zhuang clan has undoubtedly formed a system. These steel steeds are extremely important to the clan. No wonder the Zhuang clan has such strict restrictions on them. Wang Chong thought to himself. Kacha kacha. Just as he was deep in thought, a series of crisp snapping sounds came from the forest. Amidst the snapping sounds, one tree after another fell to the ground. One could vaguely make out the sound of a sharp object chopping something. In the forest, no matter how thick or thin the trees were, there was nothing that could stop a sharp object from chopping down. Boom boom boom. A moment later, 3 huge trees were chopped down in front of everyone. The huge tree trunks fell in 3 different directions. Behind the trees, 2 burly men with bulky limbs walked out of the forest calmly. They looked like glaring Vajras and they were fully armored. Their gazes were sharp and their footsteps were uniform. But the most eye-catching of all were the huge axes in their hands. The imposing aura they exuded made it seem as if they could even split a mountain in half. The Qi clan's steel guards. Even without Qi Weixi's introduction, Wang Chong already knew the identity of these axe-wielding men. The axes of the Qi clan were exquisitely made. Not only was the surface as smooth as a mirror, there was also a blood-red coiling dragon on each side. The Qi clan's axes were more than 3 Qi long, and anyone who laid eyes on them would shudder in fear. If the Qi clan's steel guards were placed on the battlefield, they would be able to split men and horses into 2. In an intense battlefield, these people were the best weapons to break through head-on. There was almost nothing that could stop those terrifying axes. Young master. The 2 of them murmured to each other and nodded slightly as a form of greeting. Be it the Zhuang clan or the Qi clan, these steel steeds and steel guards were strategic forces with special identities. This is young master Wang Chong, a descendant of Duke Jiao. For the next few days, they will follow young master and do their best to assist him. Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weici ordered their cavalry and guards. Yes, young master. Hearing the name Duke Jiao, the Zhuang family's cavalrymen and the 2 Qi family's steel guards immediately showed respect in their eyes. In the Tang dynasty, Duke Jiao was highly respected. This was not only in the court, but also in the army. If this person was of Duke Jiao's bloodline, then his identity could be deduced. Thinking of this, the few of them became even more respectful. Young master, are these people enough? Do you want us to transfer more people over? Yes, although it's very difficult to mobilize the power of the family. However, if it's young master Wang, I believe that the clan will agree to it. Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weici said. When they entered the Kunwa training camp this time, the 2 of them had received orders to befriend Wang Chong of the Wang family no matter what. The family would go all out for any need. There's no need. These people are enough. Wang Chong waved his hands, rejecting their kind intentions. What he was going to do next wasn't to fight head-on on the battlefield. Furthermore, this wasn't something that could be resolved with just a direct confrontation. The 3 of them were more than enough. Come out. After Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weici left, Wang Chong suddenly stopped in the forest. Clang. In an instant, sabers and axes vibrated, and battle armor buzzed. The 2 Qi family's steel guards and Zhuang family's cavalrymen gathered their strength as they surveyed their surroundings warily. Yet, the surroundings were completely silent. Other than the whistling of the wind, there was nothing else. Young master. The 3 of them turned around and looked at Wang Chong in astonishment. They were all true martial realm experts, but they didn't notice anything at all. They had no idea how an origin energy realm cultivator like Wang Chong managed to notice anything. Wang Chong smiled faintly as he surveyed the surroundings, not bothering to explain anything. So, without the slightest sign, at a place very close to the crowd, with a swoosh, a petite black shadow suddenly appeared. She leaped from the branches of a camphor tree and suddenly swept over the top of the crowd's head, leaving behind countless afterimages. Her speed was inconceivable. Be careful. Enemy attack. The 3 of them exclaimed in shock. Chi. The air split apart as 2 massive axes cleaved down at the black figure above them with lightning speed. At the same time, the cavalrymen on horseback were also startled. The steel spears in their hands trembled, and like an enraged dragon, they stabbed at the black figure above them. Clang! That petite black shadow lightly tapped the ground with the tip of her foot. In midair, she lightly tapped the surface of the axes of the two Qi family iron guards as if she was flipping over the ground. At the same time, the sword at her waist flicked lightly, striking the tip of the Zhuang family steel guard spear. Borrowing the momentum, she somersaulted in the air and landed lightly on the ground on the other side. This miraculous scene left the three of them dumbfounded. They had never met such a formidable opponent before. Her entire body was light as a feather, as though she wasn't affected by any force at all. To her, the faces of the trio froze, and killing intent surged in their hearts. The war steeds neighed loudly, and the spear lord roared loudly. Just as they were about to strike the black figure down from their steeds, "Stop!" In an instant, a voice sounded from behind. "Maesame Ayaka, come over here." On the ground, the petite black figure slowly stood up and casually sheathed the two long swords in her hands back to her waist. So Gongzi is acquainted with her. The Zhuang family steel guards and Qi family steel guards swiftly retracted their weapons and retreated. However, a tinge of fear still surfaced in their hearts. Even though the black-clothed assassin was a lady, her strength was astounding. Even with the combined strength of the three of them, they were still unable to deal with her. "How is it? Did anything go wrong?" Wang Chong looked at Maesame Ayaka and said. It had been almost 2 months since they last met, and Maesame Ayaka's strength had grown much stronger than before. Her movements had also become much more relaxed. Knowing what Wang Chong was asking, Maesame Ayaka shook her head. Those who entered the fleet didn't pose any problems. Occasionally, there were a few fellows with ulterior motives, but I dealt with them personally. Maesame Ayaka didn't remove the black cloth covering her face, revealing only her eyes. Maesame Ayaka didn't like to reveal her identity in the presence of outsiders. "Gongzi, is this your new subordinate?" Maesame Ayaka glanced at them and asked. "How is it?" Wang Chong smiled. "Not bad, just that her body is a little too clumsy. With her strength, it's impossible for her to protect Gongzi." Maesame Ayaka replied calmly. "Bastard, what are you talking about?" The trio flew into a rage. I'm just speaking the truth." Maesame Ayaka harumphed coldly. Ignoring the trio, she walked over to Wang Chong's side. Her arrogance made the trio glare at her angrily. Wang Chong chuckled inside. It was likely that Maesame Ayaka was displeased that he had invited these 3 men over after she left, so she intentionally said those words. "All right, they are all brave warriors on the battlefield. The battlefield is about strength and might, and it's completely different from the nimble, agile, and swift style of you assassins." Wang Chong smiled. The style of the battlefield was completely different from a life-and-death duel between martial artists. If the steel cavalry of the Zhuang clan and the steel guards of the Qi clan were to be placed on the battlefield, they would be able to slaughter countless enemies. But against assassins, they would be unable to exert any strength at all. Of course, on the other hand, on a battlefield of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people, there wasn't much room for maneuver. As such, assassins wouldn't necessarily be much stronger than warriors. After hearing Wang Chong's words, the trio's complexion improved significantly. "Gongzi, where are we going now?" Maesame Ayaka asked. She had been back for quite some time now, but she hadn't seen Wang Chong leave the mountain. His sudden departure meant that he had something up his sleeves. "Hee, you'll know once you follow me." With a flick of his sleeve, Wang Chong began to walk forward. At the west of the city, near the falling jade pavilion, there was a majestic gambling den that stood amidst a cluster of buildings. On the arched golden roof stood a golden 3-legged golden crow instead of a common dragon species in the Middle Earth. Other than that, this gambling den didn't look any different from the other gambling dens in the Central Plains. In fact, beneath the roof were rows of red lanterns. Golden Sky Gambling Den. Wang Chong was seated on the railing of the second floor of a tavern opposite the gambling den. Sipping on green wine, he surveyed the gambling den with interest. The three-legged crow was a symbol of faith and worship for the Goguryans, and it wasn't a secret to Wang Chong. However, there weren't many people in the Central Plains who knew about it. After all, Goguryeo was situated in the northeast, a long distance away. On top of that, the Goguryeo Empire had a strict customs policy, so there weren't many people in the Central Plains who knew about it. The west of the city was the territory of the Goguryans. Most of the places where the three-legged crow was hung or where the carvings of the three-legged crow could be seen were Goguryans' territories. In fact, even the tavern that Wang Chong was in at the moment was likely the property of the Goguryans. Seated on the railing, Wang Chong narrowed his eyes as many thoughts flashed through his mind. The Goguryeo Empire had a strict customs policy, forbidding outsiders from entering, especially those from the Central Plains Tang dynasty. Thus, it wasn't easy to infiltrate their country. However, the Central Plains Tang dynasty was completely different from them. Regardless of which power they were at war with, the Tang dynasty never forbade the entry of other countries. It was a completely tolerant attitude, accommodating those from other countries. All merchants were protected under the Tang dynasty. In fact, even the Chamberlain of Dependencies had set up a law specifically to protect these merchants who came to trade. Even though Wang Chong was dissatisfied with many of the actions of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, he had to admit that the Tang dynasty's open and tolerant attitude had benefited him greatly. It was clear that the Great Tang's current prosperity was inextricably linked to this open and tolerant attitude toward trade. This was also the reason why the Goguryans were able to survive in the capital of the Tang dynasty despite the tense relationship between the Goguryeo Empire and the Tang dynasty. The Goguryans even opened gambling dens, taverns, tea houses, horse stalls, and so on, and the Tang dynasty never forbade them from doing so. It wasn't that the Tang dynasty was so heartless. The Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments had worked together to investigate them, and they even had a team specially assigned to monitor these Goguryans day and night. But the final result was that there was nothing wrong with these Goguryans. They were all pure merchants. This surveillance lasted for more than a decade, and eventually, even the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments gave up on it. Chapter 235. Have you made the necessary arrangements? Wang Chong tapped on the railing lightly with his index and middle finger, producing a crisp sound. Everything is ready. Mayasame Ayako replied calmly. She stood behind Wang Chong with her head held high and her hands behind her back, not moving in the slightest. In such a short period of time, she had already changed her attire. She was wearing a black bamboo hat with a thin veil hanging down around it. As the veil shook slightly, it completely covered her face, making it blurry and indistinct. However, her eyes were still as cold as ever. Even through the veil, one could still feel a chill seeping into their bones. Mayasame Ayaka's disposition as an assassin was deeply ingrained in her bones. Regardless of what she wore, it was impossible to conceal it. Very well. Tell them to pay attention to the person with a white halo around him later on. We only have an instant, so make sure to keep a close eye on him. Also, you just have to watch carefully. No one is to make a move. Wang Chong said impassively. As he spoke, he stretched out his arm and passed the wine cup in his hand over. It was indeed a little early for a 15-year-old to be drinking, but he could still learn to interact with it. Not to mention, there was another soul hidden in his body. But Gongzi, is this really fine? This is the territory of the Goguryans. Furthermore, when we were discussing this matter, we were in the abode of the Goguryans. Mayasame Ayaka squatted down slightly and took the cup from Wang Chong's hands naturally before placing it on the table by the side. The women of Inzhou were surprisingly docile in this aspect. Even though Mayasame Ayaka had become an assassin, she was still able to maintain her composure. Of course, this was only applied to those who were stronger than her. The Goguryans are vicious, and there are many of them. If we were to anger them, we might not be able to leave this place. Mayasame Ayaka glanced at Wang Chong with deep worry in her eyes. Ordinary people knew nothing about the Goguryans, so they were able to remain calm here. But to those who knew the ins and outs of the Goguryans, standing in this place was like a dagger to their backs. This was the feeling that Mayasame Ayaka was experiencing at the moment. She had crossed hands with the Gogurians before, and they were fearsome people. When they fought, they were even more ferocious than assassins like them. Mayasame Ayaka couldn't help but worry that Wang Chong intended to deal with them in the territory of the Gogurians. Who said that this is the territory of the Gogurians? This is still the territory of the Central Plains, so when did the Gogurians have the right to call the shots here? Wang Chong stretched out a hand and leaned on the railing. He looked at the dense crowd outside and sneered. The Central Plains was still around, and the Tang dynasty was still around. The calamity hadn't arrived yet, and the Central Plains wasn't so weak that it had to bow down to the Gogurians. When did the Gogurians become the ones making the decisions here? In the past, they didn't make a move on the Gogurians because the Gogurians were well-behaved and didn't do anything too outrageous. However, since they were restless and wanted to make a move on the Tang dynasty, everything was different. At this point, Wang Chong gazed out of the railing, and his eyes turned colder and colder. Not even Wang Chong himself had sensed that as he spoke, his body was exuding a chilling and domineering aura. The 3 cavalrymen from the Zhuang clan and the Qi clan guards were taken aback. Even Mayasame Ayaka was dumbfounded. This Wang Chong exuded an intimidating aura that instilled fear in others. It was completely different from their impression of him. But even so, we don't have any evidence. We don't have any evidence to prove that the Gogurians are related to the people here. If we are careless and leave behind some evidence, the Chamberlain of Dependencies might turn against Gongzi. Mayasame Ayaka said worriedly. She knew what Wang Chong was up to. To be assaulted by the Gogurians on his first day in the camp and nearly die on White Tiger Peak, anyone would be infuriated. However, the Gogurians in the West were different from others. Even though they were known to be loan sharks and teach those who didn't pay their debts a lesson, other than that, they didn't do anything out of line. Otherwise, the Tang dynasty wouldn't have tolerated them. Evidence? Of course I will. Wang Chong sneered coldly as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. It seemed like the fact that the Gogurians, in the west of the city were law-abiding citizens, had spread far and wide. Even an assassin like Mayasame Ayaka knew that there was nothing wrong with the Gogurians. However, Wang Chong had a completely different view of the matter. King Sojurim and his group of Gogurian assassins were infamous in Great Tang, and everyone knew of them. Even though many people claimed that they had nothing to do with the Gogurians in the West. But how could Wang Chong possibly believe them? Birds of a feather flocked together. It was impossible for a person to leave their source. How could it be possible for King Sojurim and his group of Gogurian assassins to have nothing to do with the Gogurians here? With so many Gogurians here, this was the best hiding place for King Sojurim and his group of Gogurians. Other than here, King Sojurim and his group of assassins wouldn't be able to do as they pleased anywhere else. Even though the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments had been monitoring them for decades, they didn't manage to find anything. But in Wang Chong's view, they had missed out on an important corner. The densely packed customers, who frequented the taverns and gambling dens. Who said that Gogurians could only work in Gogurian restaurants, gambling dens, and shops as Gogurians. Why couldn't Gogurians pretend to be Han? As long as one could master the language of the Central Plains, there would be no difference between a Gogurian and a Han. Wang Chong had thought it through before. The Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments weren't useless people. The only reason why they hadn't found anything in the past decades was that they had been heading in the wrong direction from the start. The person they were looking for wasn't in the taverns or taverns. Rather, it was somewhere else. Make the arrangements and have them carry it out immediately. Recovering from his daze, Wang Chong waved his hands. Yes, Gongzi. After a moment of hesitation, Mayasame Ayaka nodded. Outside the railing, a huge crowd could be seen. Standing in the tavern, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka didn't attract anyone's attention. In such a luxurious place, there were simply too many scions like Wang Chong. Time slowly ticked by, and around half a tea's time later, Wang Chong finally stood up. Amidst the bewildered gazes of the crowd, he slowly walked to the railing. Whether these Gogurians are innocent or not, we'll know soon enough. Wang Chang's gaze swept past the railing and landed on the huge crowd outside. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. Without any warning, Wang Chong raised his right leg and stomped lightly on the ground. In the next instant, an invisible ripple spread out in all directions with Wang Chong at the center. In the most prosperous area of the Goguryeo-controlled territory in the west of the city, Wang Chong released his bane of the battlefield halo. The royal court had never been able to differentiate between real Goguryeo merchants and Goguryeo assassins. But Wang Chong was different. The bane of the battlefield halo was the best way to identify such Goguryons. The crowd outside the railing was silent, and there didn't seem to be any changes. Looking outside, Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up. Did I guess wrongly? Just when Wang Chong thought that his bane of the battlefield halo was ineffective, a sudden change occurred. In Wang Chong's sight, a white ripple suddenly appeared amidst the crowd, enveloping a plump man who seemed to be a wealthy merchant of the Central Plains. Then, a second, a third, 11, 12, 13, 30, 40, 50. In just a short period of time, several hundred ripples of light appeared amidst the crowd in Golden Sky Gambling Den 1. In just an instant, the white ripples vanished without a trace. It was so fast that one thought it was just an illusion. On the second floor of the tavern, Mayasame Ayaka and the Zhuang clan's cavalrymen and the Qi clan's guards had already noticed them. Even Wang Chong himself was so stunned that he couldn't speak. The surroundings were deathly silent. To think that there would be so many of them. The phenomenon caused by the bane of the battlefield only lasted for a short instant before vanishing. However, Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. In Wang Chong's initial plan, the bane of the battlefield halo was to identify the few Goguryons in the crowd. But the outcome far exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. There were actually several hundred orthodox Goguryeon warriors in the vicinity of a Golden Sky Gambling Denver. This number far exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. Furthermore, at the very last moment, Wang Chong clearly saw that the Goguryeon warriors were dressed in Han attire. Regardless of how they moved, it was impossible to discern them at all. Wang Chong's conjecture had been verified. Did you see it clearly? Wang Chong asked. Behind him, it was quiet. Everyone was stunned by the scene just now. Gongzi, you've really guessed it. Mayasame Ayaka took in a deep breath. Deep astonishment could be heard in her voice. She had no idea how those white ripples appeared. But after hearing Wang Chong's warning, no matter how slow Mayasame Ayaka's reaction was, she could easily guess that those caught in the white ripples were the real targets. But wasn't this number a little too much? Lord, these Goguryons… Shut up. Stop talking. Behind her, the Zhuang clan cavalrymen and Qi clan guards were shocked as well. But before they could finish their words, Mayasame Ayaka had already interrupted them. This place was too sensitive, and it wasn't a good place to talk about the Goguryons. It would have been fine if she didn't know, but now that she did, the atmosphere in this place immediately changed. Even Mayasame Ayaka couldn't help but reveal a fearful expression. Hee, don't bother too much about it. You should have seen the situation clearly, right? Let's settle the bill and leave. In contrast to Mayasame Ayaka's wariness, Wang Chong smiled calmly. Flinging his sleeves, he pushed aside the chair by the side and left the tavern. Chapter 236. Deep into the night, the capital fell silent. In the absence of his little sister, Wang Chong sat cross-legged in the study, breathing in and out. Strand after strand of origin energy immediately gathered and flowed into Wang Chong's body. After an unknown period of time, Wang Chong's body suddenly jolted, as if something had opened up. Wang Chong's aura abruptly changed, as if he had grown stronger. Qi! Intrigued, Wang Chong opened his eyes and raised his finger. In the next instant, a piercing cold gleam shot out from the tip of his finger. This cold gleam was only half a qi long, but it exuded an incomparably sharp aura. Opening the Guanyin acupoint can indeed allow one to release sword qi and sword qi of massacre. Wang Chong thought as he stared at the sword qi at the tip of his finger. Cultivators below Origin Energy Tier 9 were unable to release their inner qi. However, this wasn't absolute. Wang Chong knew of a small trick. By opening a hidden Guanyuan acupoint, he would be able to release his inner qi and origin energy. However, there was a flaw in this method. Only the few meridians near the Guanyuan acupoint could release origin energy. At this moment, Wang Chong could only release sword qi through his index and middle fingers. This referred to sword qi. Sometimes, it could display unexpected effects. Suddenly, faint footsteps sounded from outside. They were as light as a cat's, and if one didn't pay attention, it would be impossible to tell them apart. "Maya-same, come in." Wang Chong retracted his finger, dispelled the sword qi at the tip of his finger, and turned his gaze to the door. Jia, the door was pushed open, and a masked figure dressed in black walked in. It was Maya-same Ayaka. "Gongzi, I found their residence." Maya-same Ayaka dived straight into the topic after entering the room. Wang Chong's shoulders trembled slightly, and he abruptly raised his head to look at Maya-same Ayaka. To the southeast of the capital, near the edge of the city walls, a solitary courtyard quietly stood amidst the lush forest. In the capital, foreign merchants would often purchase real estate here, and this sort of isolated, single-door courtyard was extremely common in the capital. "Is this the place you've been investigating?" In the darkness, Wang Chong said while hiding in the crown of a camphor tree. From his corner, he could see a few lights in the courtyard. He could vaguely see the silhouettes of people coming and going, but it seemed that there weren't many of them. However, he could still see that the people in the courtyard were very vigilant. There were many open and hidden sentries. Wang Chong couldn't be more familiar with this. The first thing a scout in the army had to do when investigating a military situation was to eliminate the enemy's open and hidden sentries. When we followed those people, this was the first stronghold we found. Maya-same Ayaka said. Only her eyes were exposed, and the rest of her face was covered by a veil, making it impossible to see her expression. "This place doesn't look like a hideout. Where are the others?" Wang Chong turned around and asked with a slight frown. "There's no news yet. It's difficult to follow those people. Furthermore, most of them haven't left yet." Maya-same Ayaka lowered her voice and said with a troubled expression. Following those Gogurians was far more difficult than she had imagined. Those who dared to disguise themselves as Han were all formidable experts. They were extremely familiar with the Tang dynasty. Furthermore, after so many years, they had already formed a complete system. The Gogurians opened casinos, taverns in the west of the city, and the Gogurian assassins, or rather, soldiers, disguised themselves as wealthy merchants, bodyguards, and travelers of the Central Plains to stay in the taverns. When Maya-same Ayaka noticed this, she was astonished. The craftiness of the Gogurians was far greater than she had imagined. Everyone only paid attention to the casinos, restaurants, and inns, as well as the Gogurians working in them. How many people would notice the Han customers and travelers staying in the lodgings of the inn? Without a doubt, the Gogurians had made use of this loophole in their thinking. Upon understanding this point, Maya-same Ayaka finally understood why the royal court of the Tang dynasty was unable to find anything wrong with them. Turning her gaze to Wang Chong, Maya-same Ayaka was even more astonished. It was as if Wang Chong had known this answer from the start. Recalling the matter regarding the specter steps, Maya-same Ayaka felt even more uneasy about it. If not for Wang Chong's age, she would have worshipped him as a god. "Have you checked the interior?" Wang Chong asked. "There are roughly 30 people inside. The others are fine, but there's a particularly formidable expert in there. I dare not approach him." Maya-same Ayaka said with fear in her eyes. "More than 30 people?" Wang Chong frowned in contemplation. "So." In the next instant, Wang Chong slid down the tree and disappeared without a trace. "Gongzi!" Before Maya-same Ayaka could react, she realized that Wang Chong was nowhere to be seen. Gritting her teeth, Maya-same Ayaka slid down the tree and hurriedly chased after him. Wang Chong glanced around the perimeter of the courtyard, then carefully avoided the open and hidden sentries, circling around them. Qi Lu, Wang Chong climbed up the tree like a civet cat, climbed up the wall, and with a flip he easily entered the courtyard. His movements were so agile that even Mayasame Ayaka was astonished. "I'm here." Wang Chong landed lightly on the ground. "There are 2 at the corridor, 2 in the bushes, 2 on the tree, and 3 in the open. There are a total of 8 patrolling guards." The courtyard was much larger than it appeared from the outside, and there were 8 Goguryeo warriors patrolling the area, surveying the surroundings warily. However, due to the size of the courtyard, it wasn't too difficult for Wang Chong to sneak in. "Gongzi!" A gust of wind blew, and a familiar voice carrying a faint aroma sounded from behind. Mayasame Ayaka followed behind and crouched in the bushes beside Wang Chong. "Gongzi, it's too dangerous here. I suggest that you leave immediately," Mayasame Ayaka said worriedly. She was an assassin, and she possessed the specter steps, so it was easy for her to get around them. However, Wang Chong wasn't one of them. There were many Goguryeo experts here, and even she didn't dare to make a move recklessly. Needless to say, Wang Chong, if he were to be discovered and surrounded, he would be doomed. "Don't worry, it's very safe here." Wang Chong faintly smiled. It was true that these people were wary, but Mayasame Ayaka had underestimated his capabilities. If not for the fact that he had a weakness, Wang Chong wouldn't have dared to barge in alone. So, Wang Chong scanned the surroundings, and before Mayasame Ayaka could react, Wang Chong had already gone around the periphery and sneaked in. Unlike Mayasame Ayaka, Wang Chong's speed wasn't too fast. He made use of the shadows, the bushes, the blind spots of the Goguryeo sentries, and the time difference to sneak in. Watching from behind, Mayasame Ayaka couldn't react for a long time. Roughly 7 to 8 breaths later, Wang Chong successfully snuck into the depths of the courtyard and hid behind a fallen fake mountain. The Goguryons clearly didn't understand the art of fake mountains in the Central Plains. As such, the fake mountains in the courtyard were in the way, so they were pushed down directly. This made things easier for Wang Chong. Wang Chong's sharp gaze swept across the courtyard. Even though it looked ordinary, Wang Chong noticed many obscure symbols in the courtyard. On the pillar of the corridor, there was the image of a red flame, and on the paper window, there was the silhouette of a red boy. And on the door of the opposite room, Wang Chong saw the symbol of an arrow cluster and quiver. This is a temporary base of the Goguryons, and its level isn't high. The person stationed here shouldn't be above true martial tier 5. Wang Chong thought. He had come into contact with the Goguryons and captured a few assassins before, so he knew some of their customs. The flame represented the sun, and it was usually imprinted on the corridor. This way, it wouldn't raise any suspicions. On the other hand, the red boy on the paper window represented the 3-legged crow. The Goguryons believed that the 3-legged crow could be transformed into a red boy. As the 3-legged crow was too conspicuous in the Central Plains, and it would be weird if someone noticed it. Thus, it was much better to change it to a red boy. Other than that, the arrow cluster and quiver on the door represented the level of the base. The more arrows in the quiver, the higher the level. But no matter how high the level was, it wouldn't exceed 9 arrows. Other than that, the arrow cluster also represented another meaning. There was a master archer here, or more accurately, the Goguryons condor shooters. The Goguryons condor shooters were even more formidable than the master archers of the Turks. Any Goguryon gathering point or base with a condor slayer was equivalent to having a mobile fort. No matter how many people there were in the encirclement, with 40 to 50 arrows per arrow, they would surely suffer heavy casualties. At this point, Wang Chong couldn't help but rejoice. Mayasame Ayaka didn't understand the meaning behind these words. It was fortunate that he had made a trip here to take a look. Otherwise, if he were to call for reinforcements to surround the base without any preparation, he would surely suffer heavy casualties. In the end, he might even allow them to escape. These Goguryons sure are fearless. To think that they would even send their condor shooters here. They're treating this place as their own military base. Wang Chong was infuriated. In the Central Plains, be it Uzun, Mengshi Zhao, Abbasid Caliphate, Karak Spuzinu, or the Turks, they all had their own spies. But the Goguryons were the most thorough of them all. The Goguryon warriors were scattered all over the Central Plains like a spider web, and they had already formed a massive power within the framework of the Tang dynasty. These Goguryeo warriors weren't a group of vagrants. Rather, they had received direct support from the Goguryeo Empire. Even an esteemed existence like the Condor shooters was sent to the Central Plains. From this, it was clear how deeply the Goguryons had infiltrated the Central Plains. Looks like I have to find a way to eradicate them, Wang Chong thought. Chapter 237. Gongzi, we can't proceed any further. The Goguryeo expert is right ahead. Just as Wang Chong was deep in thought, a soft but powerful hand suddenly reached out from behind and grabbed his arm. Besides, we still don't know if that Goguryeo King Sojurim is here. If he's here, we might not even be able to escape if we were to be discovered. Mayasame Ayaka said anxiously. It wasn't a secret that Wang Chong wanted to deal with King Sojurim, but anything that involved the Goguryeo spy was incomparably dangerous. Putting aside how elusive that person was, he had a large group of vicious and formidable Goguryeo assassins under him. The first name that Mayasame Ayaka heard upon entering the assassin circle was King Sojurim. If not for Wang Chong, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to provoke King Sojurim. Yet Wang Chong was more daring than the heavens, sneaking here alone. Even she couldn't stop him. Heh, don't worry, your worries are unfounded. King Sojurim isn't here. At the very most, he's just a Turkic Condor shooter. Wang Chong turned around and revealed his findings with a suppressed voice. If King Sojurim isn't here, then our operation is meaningless. It's not worth spending so much effort just for a Goguryeo expert. Why don't we retreat for now? We'll inform the royal court after we leave, and the royal court will deal with this Goguryeo base. Mayasame Ayaka persuaded softly. This was the safest method. Retreat? How can that be? Wang Chong chuckled. The reason why we're investigating the Goguryeo base isn't to hand it over to the royal court. If Mayasame Ayaka thought that Wang Chong was doing this to exact vengeance for the Goguryons' night assault, she was being too naive. The reason why Wang Chong was investigating the Goguryons wasn't just to hand them over to the royal court. Wait here for me. Wang Chong's heart thumped. He suddenly moved his hands and feet like a giant black lizard. Shaking his head and wagging his tail, he quickly made his way to the room in front of him. Young master. Shocked, Mayasame Ayaka reached out to grab him, but it was already too late. Mayasame Ayaka trembled in fear, and her face paled. The perception of a true martial realm martial artist was very sharp, even she did not dare to cross this distance. Wang Chong actually touched it just like that. But what was even more shocking was that Mayasame Ayaka could still sense Wang Chong's presence. But in the blink of an eye, Wang Chong's aura vanished from Mayasame Ayaka's senses like a bubble. Mayasame Ayaka could still vaguely make out Wang Chong's silhouette, but she couldn't sense his aura at all. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Mayasame Ayaka was completely stunned. She wanted to go over, but she didn't dare to take the risk. What Wang Chong could do, she wasn't confident that she could. Oblivious to Mayasame Ayaka's thoughts, Wang Chong's tortoise-breathing art, which he had learned from Ablonodon and Arloja, came in handy at this moment. This tortoise hibernation, a mystical art of the Sindhi monks of the western regions, allowed one to bury oneself deep underground, sealing off all the pores of one's body, preventing the slightest bit of one's aura from leaking out. On top of that, one's metabolism would also be reduced to a snail's pace, allowing one to go without food or water for months or even years. This was something that even Wang Chong was unable to achieve back then. Back then, he was astonished when he heard of it. It could be considered as a legendary art born from the impoverished land of Sindh. Even though it wasn't too powerful, it was extremely miraculous. Wang Chong's tortoise-breathing art hadn't reached the level where one would be fine without food or water for months or even years. However, sealing off all the pores of one's body to prevent the slightest bit of one's aura from leaking out was still possible. Under such circumstances, coupled with the celestial steps, it was entirely possible for one to fool the other party. The shadows of the lanterns on the window flickered, and the soft chatter of Goguryons could be heard from within. It was the conversation between two famous beauties. Wang Chong had learned Goguryeo back then. The reason why he came here was because he heard a familiar phrase. How's the investigation? A cold voice in the room asked. It sounded authoritative. I'm almost done. I've gathered all the information on White Tiger Peak. The other authoritative voice replied. A familiar sensation assaulted him once more, and the frown on Wang Chong's face deepened. This was the second time he had heard of this term. I'll hand it over to Lord once I've gathered all the information. Our loss the previous time was too bizarre. Lord must have his reasons for instructing us to do so. We'll know what's going on once we look into it. The authoritative voice replied. Wang Chong's mind buzzed, and countless thoughts flashed across his mind. He vaguely understood something. Your subordinate understands. The second authoritative voice replied. Also, pay attention to one thing. Lord has instructed us to stay low for the next few months. We mustn't cause any trouble. The Tang dynasty is loose on the outside, but tight on the inside. It's not as simple as it looks. The warriors we transferred over from the empire were used by the Tang dynasty to temper them. Not a single one of them escaped. The voice, which sounded like it had a high status, seemed to be a little repressed. It paused for a moment before continuing. However, these warriors died a worthy death. They have served the empire loyally. Also, Lord has instructed us to deal a heavy blow as long as we survive this wave. He has already contacted His Majesty, and a batch of elite warriors will be arriving from the empire soon. When the time comes, we'll make the Tang dynasty suffer. Lord has his eyes on a batch of famous officials of the Tang dynasty. These people have never been friendly to our Goguryeo. When the time comes, we'll make them disappear from the face of the earth. We'll make the Tang dynasty suffer to the bone. Long live Goguryeo! Long live Saint Geisaman! The authoritative voice seemed to have been injected with adrenaline, and it immediately grew agitated. Outside the window, Wang Chong's heart jolted. In that instant, a frenzied gale blew in his heart, raising huge waves. King Sojurim is moving ahead of schedule. This was the only thought that remained in Wang Chong's mind. King Sojurim's operation in the Central Plains wasn't limited to just this once. The assassinations and sabotage he organized would occur once every 3 to 5 years. King Sojurim had assassinated the important officials of the royal court before. But Wang Chong knew that none of them could compare to the one King Sojurim carried out half a year later. The censors of the royal court, the generals of the Bureau of Military Personnel, Bureau of Punishments, and some old officials of the Tang dynasty were all assassinated. Even the maids and servants in their residences were executed. This incident shocked the entire royal court, and even the Holy Emperor was infuriated. It was because of this incident that King Sojurim was hunted down by the entire royal court. Even the royal guards, chamberlains of Chamberlain, and the nobles of the royal court were involved. However, he was well prepared. After the assassination was over, he successfully backed out of the Tang dynasty and returned to Goguryeo safely. The entire incident of the Tang dynasty had made him famous. But this matter should have happened half a year later. Why would it be brought forward so suddenly? Wang Chong's heart was pounding furiously. But there was one thing that Wang Chong was certain of. The matter that the Goguryeo leaders were discussing was undoubtedly that matter. The Goguryeo martial arts syndicate already had considerable influence in the capital. For King Sojurim to mobilize a large number of elite soldiers from the capital, this was the only time in history that such a matter had happened within half a year. If not for the fact that he could understand Goguryeo, no one would have known of this matter. All right. You can leave now. The troops that Lord has requested will take another month or so to arrive. Make sure to pay attention to this period of time. The royal court of the Tang dynasty is currently investigating us. Make sure not to let them find anything. Pardon me for being presumptuous, but Lord, you're overestimating them. It's not that I'm looking down on them. If they really had that kind of ability. That's true. In the room, the two Goguryans laughed heartily as they ended their conversation. Not too long after Wang Chong hid in the shadows, the door suddenly opened, and a tall and muscular Goguryeo expert carrying a long black sword bag on his back walked out. Sweeping his gaze across the surroundings, he leaped onto the roof, and in a few leaps, he disappeared from the courtyard. After the expert left, the room fell silent. Under the light, the man sat motionless in front of the table, seemingly lost in thought. No one knew what he was thinking about. How childish of me to fail to capture you. At the same time, Wang Chong sneered coldly as he slowly retreated along the path he came from. Gongzi, how is it? Upon seeing Wang Chong, Mayasame Ayaka heaved a long sigh of relief. She had been so nervous that she feared that Wang Chong would be discovered. She was prepared to make a move at any moment. But in her heart, Mayasame Ayaka was impressed. Wang Chong seemed to possess an endless amount of martial arts. It was hard to tell whether it was due to the deep heritage of the Tang dynasty, or if Wang Chong was the only one. You can leave now, Wang Chong said. He didn't intend to leave so quickly, but now he had changed his mind. After leaving the Goguryeo gathering point, Wang Chong didn't return to the Wang family residence. Instead, he headed straight for the King of Song's residence. In the Great Tang Empire, Wang Chong was the only one who could knock on the door of a noble's residence in the middle of the night. Is what you said true? In the main hall, the King of Song wore a dark casual robe with a grim expression. He had been woken up from his sleep by Wang Chong. The only person who could do this without being blamed was Wang Chong. It's true, Wang Chong said as he recounted the events in detail. Of course, there were many things that Wang Chong had added in as well. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to win the trust of the King of Song. The King of Song didn't say a word, but his expression was exceptionally grim. There were precedents of Goguryons assassinating influential officials of the Tang dynasty. Even though there was no concrete evidence, all of the clues pointed to the Goguryons. Chapter 238. Regardless of which dynasty it was, the murder of an official was a huge matter. If the Goguryons were to really pull it off, it would be a huge blow to the prestige of the Tang dynasty and the royal court. More importantly, without evidence to prove that the Goguryons were the culprits, the royal court wouldn't be able to make a move against them. The Tang dynasty was a law-abiding nation, and everything was done according to the law. It was impossible for them to massacre the Goguryons in the west of the city just based on groundless evidence. Otherwise, it would cause a chain reaction, and the repercussions would be even greater. Wang Chong, this isn't a small matter. If an official is killed without any evidence, our reputation will be tarnished. We can't allow such a thing to happen. If you have their whereabouts, I can mobilize the city defense army and even request for the Imperial Forest and Imperial Forest to help you suppress the Goguryons. However, the prerequisite is that you have to confirm the time and location of their arrival. Otherwise, if we were to make a move recklessly, we might end up in a disadvantageous position. The King of Song said grimly. He immediately understood the severity of the matter, and he also understood why Wang Chong came to look for him. The Goguryons' movements actually included the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments, both of which were under his jurisdiction. If the officials of the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments were to be killed, he would be the first to be apprehended by the Holy Emperor and punished accordingly. He couldn't afford to be careless in the face of such severe consequences. Just leave this matter to me. I have a way to track them down. But before that, I need your highness to help me with something, Wang Chong said, after which he revealed the matter of the condor shooters in the Goguryeo base. The strength of a condor shooter was no small matter. If one were to barge in without knowing their background, it would be impossible for them to return alive no matter how many people they had. A condor shooter could threaten dozens or even hundreds of experts of the same level, provided that the latter didn't have sufficient protective gear. Only a master archer could deal with a master archer. To deal with such a condor shooter, Wang Chong didn't have enough people around him. Only the King of Song's residence had such experts. I understand. The King of Song pondered for a moment before nodding. Leave this matter to me. Go to the side hall and wait. I will arrange for suitable people to help you. Thank you, Your Highness. After exiting the hall, Wang Chong met the expert arranged by the King of Song in the side hall. A burly man, who was more than 2 meters tall, stood in the hall. He wore a thick armor that looked like an iron bucket. Behind him was a 67-meter-long giant metal bow, which was extremely eye-catching. The bowstring used to draw the bow was as thick as a thumb. The thick armor covered his entire body. Other than a pair of cold eyes, nothing else could be seen. From this person, Wang Chong felt an extremely dangerous aura. Even though they were still 6 to 7 zhang away, Wang Chong felt his hair stand on end and his hair stand on end. He's an expert. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. Someone who could make his scalp go numb with just a glance was definitely an expert among experts. Greetings, young master. The King of Song has ordered me to be at your disposal. A buzzing voice came from under the fort-like armor. The voice was loud but emotionless, as if the person standing in front of Wang Chong was a machine that could not be cold. The nobles of the royal family do have some hidden experts in their residence. They are especially powerful. Wang Chong thought to himself. From his previous life, he knew that there were some especially powerful experts in the royal family who would not appear in front of people easily. The appearance of this sharpshooter was enough to prove this point. Wang Chong visited the King of Song very late at night. From the moment he requested for a sharpshooter expert to the formal acceptance, it only took a moment. The King of Song had already selected a suitable expert for him. "How many arrows can you shoot in an instant?" asked Wang Chong, looking at the burly man who was a head taller than him. 104. Wang Chong sucked in a cold breath when he heard the crisp and decisive voice, without the slightest hesitation. This number was twice that of an ordinary sharpshooter. "How far can each arrow shoot?" asked Wang Chong again. 17 miles away. Once again it was a surprising answer. "How far can one see in the dark, down to the finest detail?" Wang Chong said. This time, it involved another concept in archery. The so-called down to the finest detail was to clearly see the lines on the wings of a mosquito or the veins on the back of a leaf. Only when one reached this level could one be said to be able to see the finest detail. This was one of the aspects of archery. It was much more demanding than observing an apple on a tree from several miles away. Because an apple alone was not considered a vein, it was naturally not considered as being able to see the finest detail. This time, the burly man at the corner of the hall hesitated for a moment and did not answer immediately. 267 zhang. The burly man said after a moment of silence. 267 zhang, that was 800 meters. To be able to see the fine lines on the wings of a mosquito from 800 meters away in the dark was already an astounding feat. With such eyesight paired with his astounding cultivation, he would be an invincible threat in the dark. Wang Chong was delighted. "Follow me." Bringing the burly man with him, Wang Chong left the King of Song residence. There was still a month before King Sojuram would make his move, so there was more than enough time. On the other hand, with this master archer whom he begged from King Song, Myasame Ayaka, and the experts of the Zhuang and Qi clans, Wang Chong didn't panic. Instead, he began his cultivation plan. In the silent night, the Gogurians' gathering point was as peaceful as ever. So far, the Gogurians hadn't noticed anything at all. Swoosh! Around a quarter to midnight, a figure leaped over the walls of the residence. Beneath his clothes, 3 protruding swords stood out conspicuously. This was the most obvious symbol of a Gogurian warrior. The night wind blew, and the Gogurian warrior seemed extremely wary. As soon as he landed on the ground, he immediately scanned his surroundings, and after confirming that there was nothing amiss, he quickly walked away. After walking for a while, he soon left the vicinity of the gathering point. While he was walking, he suddenly saw a young man hurrying toward him. Taken aback, a hint of doubt flashed across his eyes. He felt that something was amiss, but he didn't think that he had exposed any flaws, so the other party shouldn't be coming for him. Thus, he continued on his way. It seemed like an insignificant encounter, but just as the two of them were about to brush past each other, an abrupt change occurred. Clang! The sound of a sword being unsheathed suddenly echoed in his ears. Indistinctly, killing intent surged, and a chilling aura enveloped the Gogurian expert like a tidal wave. Not good. The Gogurian expert's face warped in horror, and he subconsciously tried to draw his sword. However, his overconfidence and carelessness had harmed him. A sharp sword chi pierced through his chest, piercing right through his chest and exiting through his back. The blinding radiance of the sword chi even pierced through a large tree behind him. In just an instant, the Goguryeo expert was severely injured. Bastard! Alarmed and furious, the Goguryeo expert swiftly whipped out 2 black sabers, and at the same time, origin energy burst forth from his body. A ring of white ripples formed from origin energy rippled outward in all directions, reminiscent of the rumbling of metal. Wherever the white ripples passed, the surrounding air would tremble violently, and a sound reminiscent of a tsunami could be heard. Origin Energy Tier 9. At this level, one would be able to release one's inner chi externally, and the white ripples would appear with every movement of one's body. At this level, one would be able to execute the void-splitting palm, void-shattering palm, and even more formidable experts would be able to execute the legendary 100 Steps Divine Fist. Clearly, the Goguryeo expert was an Origin Energy Tier 9 expert. How dare you assault me? You're courting death. The Goguryeon's eyes were sharp. With a single glance, he could tell that the young man who assaulted him didn't possess a high cultivation. The other party had only managed to injure him by catching him off guard. However, in the next moment, something unexpected happened. In an instant, the white ripples that the Goguryeo expert had released suddenly vanished, as though the source of life had been sucked dry. This abrupt change disrupted the Goguryeo expert's rhythm. Not only was his body affected, even his origin energy was thrown out of balance. It was as though a pair of invisible shackles had locked down his origin energy, causing his cultivation to plummet from Origin Energy Tier 9 to Origin Energy Tier 8. Chi! In that instant, a blazing sword chi harnessed an aura of destruction and slaughter pierced through his left chest. The 2 sword chi had sent him into a state of near death. Puchi! Following which, a bizarrely shaped crimson sword slid through his flesh and pierced into the Goguryeo expert's heart. The battle only lasted for a few breaths before it ended. What in the world is going on? Astonished, the Goguryeo expert fell to his knees. Even at the moment of his death, he had no idea what had happened to his body. Why did the white ripples that he had released suddenly vanish? Why did he suddenly lose control of a portion of his origin energy even though he still had it in his body? How comfortable! So this is the little yin-yang art. Standing before the corpse of the Goguryeo expert, Wang Chong drove the little yin-yang art in his body, and waves of origin energy flowed into his body through the crimson little yin-yang sword. The exhilaration from the growth of origin energy was indescribable. The 84,000 pores on his body felt as though they had opened up, and the origin energy in his body was growing swiftly as well. This was the first time Wang Chong was using the little yin-yang sword given to him by his master, the evil emperor, to absorb another person's origin energy. The feeling was indescribable. It's no wonder why the great yin-yang heaven creation art is labeled as an evil art. This feeling of easily obtaining origin energy is simply too addictive. And once a person is addicted to it, it's easy for them to harbor thoughts of endless slaughter. Thus, those who cultivate this art will become numb to killing, becoming more and more frenzied. In that instant, Wang Chong's mind was clear, and the origin energy in his body grew rapidly. In just a short period of time, it had already surpassed Wang Chong's several months of hard work, leaving Wang Chong in awe. Chapter 239. At the same time, a voice sounded in Wang Chong's mind. Along with this voice, a raging wind blew, and invisible origin energy seeped into Wang Chong's body through his limbs and bones. In that instant, Wang Chong could clearly sense that his aura had grown slightly stronger, and the bane of the battlefield halo within him had grown significantly stronger as well. Just a single origin energy Tier 9 Goguryeo warrior had raised Wang Chong's origin energy and halo simultaneously. There was no other way to raise his cultivation faster than this. Using the little yin-yang art to absorb the opponent's origin energy and internal energy, using the sword chi of massacre to subdue the opponent, and through killing the opponent, he would absorb the opponent's internal energy to strengthen the little yin-yang art. Repeating this cycle, Wang Chong's cultivation plan in his previous life was slowly being carried out by his own hands. To think that I thought that the little yin-yang art could only absorb a small portion of the opponent's origin energy when they were severely injured, and that it was a huge flaw. From the looks of it now, this ability is already formidable. Seeing is believing. No matter how much I hear or understand, I can't compare to trying it out with my own eyes. Executing the little yin-yang art was completely different from what he imagined it to be. It wasn't an easy task to absorb all of an opponent's internal energy. At the very least, one had to reach an extremely high level of mastery in order to do so. In comparison, the little yin-yang art's ability to absorb a portion of the opponent's origin energy when they were severely injured and unable to put up any resistance was already incredible. Gongzi, you're even more like an assassin than us. A familiar voice suddenly sounded from behind. On a nearby tree, Mayasame Ayaka, dressed in a nocturnal outfit, slid down from the lush crown of the tree. Her movements were as light as a leopard as she slowly made her way toward Wang Chong. She had been watching from the top of the tree, prepared to make a move the moment the situation turned for the worse. She didn't expect Wang Chong's attack to be so swift and decisive, dealing with the opponent in just a few moves. She didn't even have a chance to make a move. Hee, even if you haven't eaten pork, haven't you seen a pig run? Wang Chong chuckled. Young master? Taken aback, Mayasame Ayaka couldn't help but blush. Wang Chong was clearly referring to her. Ha! Wang Chong laughed heartily. He used a few lines from his previous life to tease Mayasame Ayaka. Let's go and deal with the corpses. Don't let the Gogurians find out. As Wang Chong spoke, he bent down and searched the body of the Origin Energy Tier 9 Gogurian. Soon Wang Chong discovered something. It was a wooden box about 2 fingers wide, and it exuded a faint fragrance. The Gogurians seemed to have placed great importance on it. Wang Chong opened the wooden box, and soon, a golden Gogurian ginseng appeared before his eyes. It's really here. Looking at the ginseng in the wooden box, Wang Chong smiled as if he had expected it. The reason why he ambushed the Gogurian expert wasn't just to cultivate the little yin-yang art and bane of the battlefield. His other objective was the Gogurian ginseng. The Gogurian ginseng was renowned throughout the world, and according to the age of the ginseng, it could be categorized into white and gold. Judging from the color, this ginseng was at least 200 to 300 years old. The Zhuang clan and Qi clan had to put in a lot of effort just to take out a 200 to 300 years old ginseng, and yet, every single one of these Gogurian warriors had one on them. Even though Gogurian's territory isn't large, it has quite a few experts. These Gogurian ginseng sure have contributed a lot. Looking at the ginseng in his hand, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh. Just by picking an Origin Energy Tier 9 Gogurian warrior, he was able to find a 200 to 300 years old ginseng on him. From this, it was clear how wealthy Gogurian was. With these deep fire ginseng, the Gogurian Empire could easily mass-produce experts. Just like harvesting chives, he plucked them wave after wave. Placing the ginseng back into the wooden box, Wang Chong stuffed it into his robe, turned around, and left. Not too long after he left, the battlefield was cleaned up. The corpses and bloodstains were all wiped clean. Even the traces of battle were wiped clean. In the following period of time, Wang Chong spent his days ambushing the Gogurians who were traveling between the stronghold and the other areas of the capital. Wang Chong had long realized that this stronghold was in close contact with the Gogurians in the west of the capital. Every day, there would be a different group of people coming and going. As long as he chose a suitable time to ambush them along the way, he would be able to accomplish it without anyone noticing. Of course, the Gogurians didn't lack experts either, and those true martial realm experts were more than enough to crush Wang Chong easily. Thus, Wang Chong chose his opponents carefully, choosing only Origin Energy Tier 9 experts. As for the others, he didn't touch a single true martial realm expert. At the very least, he wouldn't touch them at his current cultivation realm. 1, 2, 3, Wang Chong ambushed the Gogurian warriors one after another, strengthening his bane of the battlefield halo and the origin energy in his body. At the same time, the ginseng collected from the Gogurian warriors was also consumed by Wang Chong, nourishing the origin energy in Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong could feel his strength growing stronger and stronger, and he was getting closer and closer to Origin Energy Tier 8. Days passed, but Wang Chong wasn't in a hurry. He made use of this rare opportunity to strengthen himself. The amount of Origin Energy required to advance from Origin Energy Tier 7 to Origin Energy Tier 8 was far greater than any of the previous tiers. The higher one's realm, the more Origin Energy one would require. In fact, the amount of Origin Energy required could even be multiplied. Amidst the darkness, a loud bellow sounded. In an instant, 3 black sabers charged out from the forest like a massive spinning top, slicing toward Wang Chong. So, without any hesitation, Wang Chong executed the single consecutive slash and somersaulted in midair, dodging the lightning strike by a hair's breadth. 2 dazzling sword chi, each as thick as a finger, filled with killing intent and destruction, shot out from between Wang Chong's fingers as he somersaulted. These 2 sword chi were incomparably sharp. The first pierced through the flood of stellar energy and pierced through the Goguryeo warrior's left chest, while the second pierced through his right chest. 2 consecutive surges of sword chi struck down the Goguryeo cultivator. What kind of sword chi is this? Amidst the forest, the Goguryeo warrior bellowed in disbelief. The flood of stellar energy of an Origin Energy Tier 9 cultivator was powerful enough to shatter boulders and deflect even the attacks of swords and sabers. Yet, it was unable to dodge those 2 inconspicuous sword chi. But before he could even react, Puchi, Wang Chong leaped up from the tree branch and flew back. The little yin-yang sword pierced into the Goguryeo warrior's body. Congratulations to user for killing 20 Goguryeo warriors. A voice filled with anticipation sounded by Wang Chong's ear. Hong Long, the surrounding air vibrated, and an indiscernible surge of Origin energy gathered from the surroundings. Wang Chong wasn't unfamiliar with the bane of the battlefield aura, but there was something different this time around. Wang Chong could clearly sense that the rate and duration of the Origin energy surging into his body had increased significantly, and it was completely different from before. Not only so, along with the influx of Origin energy, Wang Chong felt the bane of the battlefield aura in his body jolting, and the aura it emanated also changed slightly. It became denser and heavier. As expected, when the number of enemy soldiers I kill reaches an integer of 10, 20, or 30, the energy I absorb from the surroundings will undergo a qualitative change. Regardless of whether it's the intensity of the Origin energy absorbed or the duration of the absorption, it will increase significantly. Surges of Origin energy gushed into Wang Chong's body from the Goguryeo warrior's body, and while feeling the increase in Origin energy, Wang Chong slowly closed his eyes and nodded in realization. Back then, during the night assault, Wang Chong had noticed that there would be a change in the absorption of Origin energy when the number of enemies he killed reached an integer. However, he wasn't able to verify it back then. Now that he had verified it, it was indeed the case. Gongzi, the Goguryons are getting more and more wary. Behind him, Mayasame Ayaka walked out from the forest. Glancing at Wang Chong's back, a hint of admiration flashed across her eyes. Wang Chong had already simplified his assassination methods, turning them into a model that would allow him to become more efficient. His battle with the Goguryons had never lasted too long before Wang Chong started. Most of the time, the battle would end in just a few rounds. Of course, this was also due to the fact that such an ambush wasn't suitable for a prolonged battle. Otherwise, if the Goguryons in the base were to be alarmed, Wang Chong's identity would be exposed. Those fellows are indeed getting more and more wary. They must have noticed something. Wang Chong raised his head and remarked. He should have been the one to make the first move, but the Goguryeo was the one who made the first move. This was the first time such a situation had occurred. If not for the massive increase in his fighting prowess over the past dozen days, he wouldn't have been able to match up to his initial strength. It would have been impossible for the battle to end so quickly. Gongyu, aren't you curious as to why I never allow you to interfere? Wang Chong suddenly turned around and glanced at Mayasame Ayaka. Gong, you wouldn't dare. Wang Chong replied with a smile that didn't seem like a smile, but Mayasame Ayaka's heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly lowered her head. She wasn't a fool. In just half a month, Wang Chong's cultivation was already higher than what others would achieve in a year. The powerful sword qi at his fingertips and the inexplicable weakening of his opponents all pointed to the fact that there was something invisible at play in the battle. Gong Yu's cultivation was even higher than Wang Chong's, so she could sense that the aura of this young master of the Tang dynasty would rise significantly every time he killed an opponent. It would be a miracle if she said that there was nothing amiss here. Chapter 240. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Wang Chong chuckled. Myasame Ayaka was much smarter than he had thought. I guess there's no need for me to say anything then. Wang Chong thought. It was impossible for the Gogurians to not notice the disappearance of so many of their men. Wang Chong knew that it would be more and more difficult to ambush them. Gongzi, what should we do next? Kneeling on the floor, Myasame Ayaka asked with a lowered head. Hehe, since this place is already guarded, let's change our location. Myasame, have you memorized the faces of those Gogurians? Wang Chong said, yes. Every single one of the Gogurian soldiers that we have discovered has been tailed. Myasame Ayaka replied respectfully. Even though they had been targeting this Gogurian base, Wang Chong and the others had their own plans as well. All of the Gogurian soldiers that Wang Chong had identified had been tailed. Every single one of them had been recorded down in detail. Even though they had only discovered this Gogurian base initially, they had discovered more and more as time went by. As the saying goes, a crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. In a place like the capital, the Gogurians had far more than just this one. Are we going to head to another place now? Myasame Ayaka raised her head and asked. There's no rush. Wang Chong chuckled and waved his hands. Since he had already killed so many Gogurians, he decided to rest for the time being. There was another matter that he had to attend to. Chonga, you're here. In Big Uncle Wang Zhen's residence, deep into the night, Wang Zhen, dressed in a loose robe with a hairpin on his head, was seated in the main hall with a benevolent look on his face. In front of him was a porcelain plate, and on the plate were 2 cups of fragrant tea. The cups were still warm, and the fragrance of the tea wafted into the air. On top of that, there were 5 exquisite desserts placed on the sandalwood table. From the looks of it, Wang Zhen seemed to have known that Wang Chong would be coming. Big Uncle. Wang Chong faintly smiled and respectfully bowed. It had been more than a month since they last met, and Big Uncle's complexion was rosy. His complexion was extraordinary, and he seemed to be in good health. Even the invisible aura he exuded had increased significantly. Congratulations, Big Uncle. Looks like you're going to be promoted again. Wang Chong grinned. Brat, what nonsense are you spouting? At our level, taking a step forward is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. How could it be that easy? Big Uncle Wang Zhen scolded jokingly. His actions had become much more amiable. In the past, he would never have dared to joke around with Wang Chong, but now, he found this nephew of his more and more pleasing to the eye. It was impossible for Wang Chong to say that he would be promoted. However, his authority in the imperial court was indeed growing stronger and stronger. This was inseparable from Wang Chong. The regional commander's incident that Wang Chong had stirred up had come to an end. Even though there had been some twists and turns along the way, in the end, the Wang clan's prestige had risen once more, and its influence had grown significantly as well. The Wang clan and Song clan had been on good terms for 3 generations, and with the reinstatement of the king of Song, the Wang clan had benefited as well. It was only natural that Wang Zhen's standing in the imperial court would rise. You're here for the matter regarding Yang Zhao, right? Wang Zhen asked. Wang Chong chuckled. Big Uncle, what's the current situation in the imperial court? What else can it be? Zhangqiu Jianxiong is currently a ferocious dragon crossing the river. Who wouldn't be suspicious of the sudden intrusion of a border official? It has never been an easy feat to get to the imperial court from this place. It would be a wonder if he could get in so easily. Wang Zhen took a sip of tea and tapped the table beside him with a finger. Wang Chong nodded and sat down beside Big Uncle Wang Zhen with a smile. Chong, let me ask you one more time. Are you sure that Zhangqiu Jianxiong will be able to enter the imperial court? Wang Zhen put down his teacup and asked grimly. This matter was of great importance, so he had to get to the bottom of it. Of course, it's because that person wants him to go up. Wang Chong pointed to the sky and smiled. Wang Zhen frowned. He was an intelligent person, so he immediately understood what was going on. By pointing to the sky, it went without saying that Wang Chong was referring to the Holy Emperor. Given the Holy Emperor's standing, he shouldn't have anything to do with Zhangzhou Jianxiong. After all, even though Zhangzhou Jianxiong had presided over Jiannan for several decades, he hadn't contributed much to the empire. At the very most, he had only managed to ensure the peace of the region. Given his achievements, it was impossible for him to enter the Bureau of Military Personnel. Since this wasn't the intention of the Holy Emperor, there was only one person left. Consort Taizhen. This thought flashed across Wang Zhen's mind. Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao were cousins, and Yang Zhao was on good terms with Zhangzhou Jianxiong. It wasn't hard to imagine the relationship between the two. The Holy Emperor had never been interested in women, but for some reason he was extremely fond of this Consort Taizhen. In fact, he even made an exception to stand against the entire royal court for her, and even the king of Song was demoted. If Consort Taizhen wanted Zhangzhou Jianxiong to enter the capital, it would be the will of the Holy Emperor. No matter how inexperienced Zhangzhou Jianxiong was, no matter how many people were against him, he would still be able to enter the capital. Chong. Looking at the young Wang Chong before him, a complicated gleam flashed across Wang Zhen's eyes. Wang Chong might be young, but for some reason he possessed talent in the royal court that left even his uncle in awe. If it was in the past, Wang Zhen might have felt a little jealous. But now, it was truly a blessing for the Wang clan to have such a Qilin son. I know what I should do now. Wang Zhen nodded. I'll make a move tomorrow and officially support Zhangzhou Jianxiong. Those bastards in the royal court sure are cunning. They are probably waiting for someone else to step in. Wang Chong snickered inside. Others might be like that, but Big Uncle was the same as well. Right, Big Uncle, where did Cousin Yen go? Wang Chong said. But, you don't know? Wang Zhen frowned in bewilderment. Zhu Yen went to Shenwei training camp. Didn't she tell you about this? Wang Chong shook his head. Initially, he thought that this second sister of his would come to Kunwu. Little did he expect that she would go to the even more impressive Shenwei training camp. She really didn't care about him, her little brother, at all. But thinking about it, this was indeed something she would do. After leaving Big Uncle's residence, Wang Chong headed straight for the Falling Jade Pavilion. It had been 2 months since he last visited the Alchemist's Secret Alliance. Adding it all up, he could already afford 6 pills. To Wang Chong, these powerful pills of the royal court were the best tools for him to raise his cultivation. After paying a hefty fee, Wang Chong successfully obtained what he wanted from Liu Zhizhang. 4 elixirs that could increase one's cultivation, and 2 healing elixirs. After receiving these pills, Wang Chong didn't return to the Wang clan. Instead, he swallowed them on the spot. Boom! After swallowing 4 pills consecutively, Wang Chong's aura surged, and in a short period of time, he was already infinitely close to reaching Origin Energy Tier 8. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded, and the bones in Wang Chong's body creaked. The tide-like Yuan Qi was vast and mighty, rushing through all of his bones and muscles. For a moment, Wang Chong felt like the thunder in the distance had grown much louder. His eyes lit up. The darkness before him seemed to have lightened. Congratulations, Gongzi, you finally reached Origin Energy Tier 8. In the Falling Jade Pavilion, Mayasame Ayaka knelt on the floor respectfully. She immediately sensed the changes in Wang Chong's body, and she understood Wang Chong's plan. The reason why Wang Chong stopped his plan was because he wanted to use the pills here to reach Origin Energy Tier 8. With a cultivation of Origin Energy Tier 8, it would be much easier for him to carry out the assassination later on. Hee, that's right. I've finally reached it. Feeling the raging energy in his body, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel delighted. Upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 8, one's eye of discernment and strength would be enhanced significantly. More importantly, once he reached Origin Energy Tier 8, he would be able to cultivate a speed-type secret art on top of agility-type cultivation techniques. Strength, speed, and dexterity, To a true martial artist, none of these were lacking. With just the Spectre Steps, Mayasame Ayaka was able to become a top-notch assassin. On the other hand, Wang Chong would only grow stronger. Sharpening the axe won't delay the work of chopping wood. Raising his speed, strength, and dexterity would make dealing with the Gogurians much easier. In the remaining time, Wang Chong continued to work hard and raised his might of the barbaric god to 8 Dan. At this point, Wang Chong's strength and explosiveness had already reached the level of an Origin Energy Tier 9 primary stage expert. Even without using the sword chi of Massacre, he was still able to match up to an expert of this level. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Wang Chong pondered for a moment before deciding on a speed-type cultivation technique for himself. Phantom Steps. This secret art was similar to Mayasame Ayaka's Spectre Steps in that it was soundless and incomparably fast. However, unlike Mayasame Ayaka's, Phantom Steps didn't have a huge flaw like Spectre Steps, and it wouldn't result in severe injuries or death. In Wang Chong's memories, this was an extremely mature movement technique. Surges of origin energy surged within Wang Chong's body. Unlike any other cultivation technique he had cultivated before, the origin energy in Wang Chong's body circulated once around his body before rushing toward the acupoints and meridians in his legs like a raging river. It was impossible for a person to walk with their hands, so regardless of whether it was Spectre Steps or Phantom Steps, the most crucial acupoints and meridians were located in the legs. This was the first time Wang Chong was cultivating a speed-type secret art, and the process wasn't easy. However, using the undigested medicinal energy from the 4 pills he had just consumed, Wang Chong successfully cleared a large portion of the meridians and acupoints in his legs. Pung ping pung. Innumerable profound entrances and acupoints burst open. 2 days later. With a flash of light, a silhouette flitted across the room and through the door, disappearing from the room. Before Mayasame Ayaka could react, she saw a familiar silhouette not too far away. Gogongzi. Seeing Wang Chong suddenly appear under the moonlight, Mayasame Ayaka was astonished. Her eyes were wide open as she stared in disbelief at the nearby Wang Chong. She was a natural-born assassin, and her perception was even sharper than Wang Chong's. But just a moment ago, she didn't even notice how Wang Chong had disappeared from the room and passed by her. In fact, even at such a close distance, she couldn't sense Wang Chong's aura at all. Even if she were to see him with her eyes, she would find his silhouette blurry, unable to see him clearly. What kind of cultivation technique is this? Mayasame Ayaka was astonished. Chapter 241. Hee Mayasame, try and catch me. Wang Chong turned around and smiled, revealing a row of snow-white teeth amidst the darkness. Gongzi, I won't stand on ceremony then. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Mayasame Ayaka chuckled. She was also interested to see how much Wang Chong had improved after his breakthrough. Even though Wang Chong's movement technique seemed to be even more profound than hers, Mayasame Ayaka was still confident that she could take him down. After all, the difference in strength between the two of them was clear for all to see. Even though Wang Chong had crossed blows with her twice, neither of them were fair and square. The first time was through trickery, and the second time was when she was severely injured by Li Zhuxin. In terms of strength, Mayasame Ayaka wasn't inferior to Wang Chong. Gongzi, I'm coming. Mayasame Ayaka smiled, and the corners of her eyes curled up slightly. Without any warning, the light at the entrance warped for a moment, and like a specter, Mayasame Ayaka melted into the void, vanishing from the spot. To comprehend the essence of the Spectre Steps, one would be akin to a specter wandering in the night, making it difficult for one to discern it with the naked eye. Even experts stronger than oneself would only be able to see a faint shadow, reminiscent of a transparent specter. This was also the origin of the name Spectre Steps. Gongzi, I've caught you. Just a few feet from Wang Chong, Mayasame Ayaka revealed a victorious smile beneath her black veil. Even though Wang Chong was talented, he was still far from matching up to her. Mayasame, are you certain? A light chuckle sounded in the darkness. The source of the chuckle was erratic, but it didn't originate from where Mayasame Ayaka was standing. Mayasame Ayaka's face warped. She immediately knew that the situation had changed. Shwa. In an instant, Mayasame Ayaka's speed abruptly increased, and she abruptly reached out to grab Wang Chong. However, a flash of light abruptly appeared, and Mayasame Ayaka's grasp missed. He disappeared? Mayasame Ayaka's eyes narrowed as her face warped in shock. She didn't think that her sure kill attack would actually fail. She was also a true martial realm expert, so she immediately understood the meaning behind this strike. For Wang Chong to be able to dodge her attack in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, there was only one way to do it, and that was if his speed was faster than hers. How is this possible? Mayasame Ayaka's eyes were filled with disbelief. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Although she never dared to look down on Wang Chong, this fact was too shocking. But what was even more shocking was that just 3 zhang away, Mayasame Ayaka saw 3 identical Wang Chong, and all 3 of them were smiling at her. "Young master, how did you do it?" Mayasame Ayaka exclaimed in shock. These 3 Wang Chong didn't exude the slightest aura, and with Mayasame Ayaka's sharp senses, it was impossible for her to discern them. This is called phantom steps. Even further away, in the darkness, Wang Chong appeared from beneath another broken wall. The moment he appeared, the 3 phantoms vanished as well. What you see are only my remnant phantoms. My cultivation is still lacking, so I can only leave behind 3 phantoms at the same time. If I were stronger, I would be able to split into 12, 20, or even 60 to 70 phantoms. With his hands behind his back, Wang Chong walked out from beneath the broken wall with a confident and composed expression. But why haven't I heard of it before? Mayasame Ayaka asked doubtfully. It would be a wonder if you knew. Wang Chong chuckled inwardly. Of course, the true phantom steps wasn't as formidable as this. However, Wang Chong had modified it to a certain extent, fusing it with the tortoise breathing art. This made up for the weakness of phantoms being easily seen through. After all, even the aura of Wang Chong couldn't be detected, needless to say, these 3 phantoms. Mayasame Ayaka was perplexed, but it was true that Wang Chong's cultivation technique was formidable. "Let's go. I might need your help this time." Without saying anything else, Wang Chong turned around and walked into the depths of the darkness. Having reached Origin Energy Tier 8 and successfully cultivated the Phantom Steps, Wang Chong's agility, speed, and strength were all at the same time. At this point, he had already achieved minor accomplishment in his martial arts. And now, Wang Chong was determined to challenge the difficulty of the second Gogrian base. I should head to the second Gogrian base to take a look. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind, and he soon disappeared into the darkness. Deep in the night, at 4 o'clock in the morning, the capital was quiet as everyone slept soundly. Other than the patrolling Imperial Army soldiers and drunkards, there was no one else on the streets. In a remote area in the northeast corner of the capital, a one-eyed fatty, dressed in a wide-sleeved robe and the attire of a minister-counselor, was walking over from the edge. Even though he was disguised as an ordinary merchant, his footsteps were forceful. His muscular arms were subconsciously placed on his waist, which was completely incompatible with his disguise. All of a sudden, a loud noise was heard. The one-eyed fatty's body tensed up, and he immediately turned his gaze toward the source of the sound warily. Not too far away, a 15 to 16-year-old youngster suddenly walked out from the forest. That youngster was leaning against a tree trunk with his arms crossed, and a cold sneer appeared on his face. "Gogrian!" The youngster's lips moved, and he suddenly uttered 4 words in Gogrian. Hearing these 4 words, the one-eyed fatty's expression changed dramatically, as if he had been greatly humiliated, and his expression suddenly became ferocious. "Bastard!" There was no one around. The one-eyed fatty gritted his teeth and with a wah sound, he took off the minister-counselor's robe and removed the Han disguise on his body. Beneath the loose robe, 3 Gogrian sabers were revealed as well. "You're courting death." The one-eyed fatty's face turned cold. Holding the 3rd saber under his ribs, his movements were inconceivably agile. Shwa! The moment he took off his outer robe, the one-eyed fatty stomped on the ground and charged toward Wang Chong like an arrow released from a bow. In an instant, he covered a distance of a dozen zhang. In that instant, the one-eyed fatty's speed was inconceivable. Seeing the one-eyed fatty's superior martial arts, the youngster seemed to have been frightened. His body trembled, and he hurriedly retreated into the forest. You're only thinking of escaping now? It's too late. The one-eyed fatty was as swift as a blink of an eye, and killing intent burst forth from his remaining eye. Shwa shwa. Before he could even reach the other party, two incomparably sharp saber chi were already flying toward him. Kacha! Two massive trees abruptly snapped, and the cracks were as smooth as a mirror. Die! The saber chi was swift, but the one-eyed fatty was even faster. In the blink of an eye, he had already entered the forest. Almost at the same instant the one-eyed fatty entered the forest, two figures charged toward him from the left and right. Mayasame Ayaka's speed was incredible, and the dagger in her hand shot toward the one-eyed fatty. At the same time, Wang Chong executed phantom steps and arrived at the same time. Chi, without any hesitation, a blinding sword chi of massacre burst forth from the tip of the little yin-yang sword. Boom! The one-eyed fatty reacted swiftly. Almost at the same instant that Wang Chong executed the sword chi of massacre, he released his Jun Chi, and a powerful deluge of stellar energy burst forth. Unlike the deluge of stellar energy of an Origin Energy Tier 9 expert, the one-eyed fatty's stellar energy was clearly much stronger. Jolted by the deluge of stellar energy, Wang Chong's sword chi of massacre weakened significantly. However, the sword chi of massacre was still invincible. Even the stellar energy of a true martial realm expert was able to pierce through it. You brat, to think that you still have such a move. The one-eyed fatty sensed that something was amiss. Without even thinking, he slashed out with his saber. Boom! A saber chi directly shattered Wang Chong's sword chi of massacre. At the same time, he slashed out with his hand, and a saber sword flew toward Wang Chong. Saber chi! Wang Chong was astonished. Unlike the other Gogrian warriors he had come into contact with before, this fatty had actually managed to cultivate saber chi. His slaughter sword chi was shaken by the astral chi and then slashed by the saber chi, causing it to dissipate. Whew! With no time to think, Wang Chong had no choice but to dodge the other party's powerful saber chi. A true martial realm expert possessed incredible strength, and he wasn't a match for them at the moment. Panglong. Almost at the same instant that Wang Chong was sent flying, a saber chi struck the spot where Wang Chong had been standing a moment ago. With a loud boom, dirt flew into the air, and a crack of 6 to 7 zhang long appeared on the ground. Ah! At the same instant that Wang Chong dodged, Mayasame Ayaka also clashed with the one-eyed fatty. With a chi sound, the clothes on the one-eyed fatty's shoulder were torn apart, revealing a deep wound several inches deep. However, with a loud bellow, the one-eyed fatty's 3 sabers dashed forward like a whirlwind. Using his ferocious aura and vicious fighting style, he was actually able to suppress Mayasame Ayaka. As an assassin, Mayasame Ayaka specialized in agility, speed, and killing with a single blow. She was completely different from warriors like the one-eyed fatty, who preferred to fight head-on. Facing the one-eyed fatty's ferocious fighting style, Mayasame Ayaka was actually unable to utilize her footwork for the time being. She could only use the specter steps to change her position. That fellow is strong. When Wang Chong saw this sight, he was inwardly shocked. This was the first time he was facing a true martial realm expert as an Origin Energy realm cultivator. The one-eyed fatty was far more difficult to deal with than he had expected. From the looks of it, Mayasame Ayaka didn't have much of a chance against Zhang Xian's ruthless 3-saber stream, where he was risking his life for his own. Without any hesitation, Wang Chong executed the phantom steps and executed the hexad arms technique. This time, a single sword chi split into 6, and each of them was as thick as a finger, shooting toward different parts of the one-eyed fatty's body. On the other side, Mayasame Ayaka had also pushed the specter steps to its limits, and she surrounded the one-eyed fatty, launching a flurry of attacks at him. Haha, you two fellows, do you think that you can deal with me just like that? The halo of swamp. All of a sudden, a burst of laughter echoed in the ears of the duo. Before he could finish his words, the aura around the one-eyed fatty abruptly changed, and a halo accompanied by stellar energy burst forth. However, unlike the green halo of thorns that Wang Chong had seen before, the halo beneath the one-eyed fatty's feet was actually gray in color. Chapter 242. Not good. Upon seeing this halo, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka's faces warped. They knew that they had kicked a metal plate this time around. The halo of Meyer was a mutated halo unique to Goguryeo. In essence, it was a strength halo, but due to the unique environment of Goguryeo, it came with the muddy effect. Not only could it boost one's strength, it could also slow down the movements of one's opponents. Only a handful of elites in Goguryeo possessed such a halo. Wang Chong had intended for Mayasame Ayaka to pick the weaker true martial realm cultivators, but from the looks of it, she had miscalculated. Gongzi, be careful. Mayasame Ayaka also realized that she had made a mistake in her judgment. The other party was clearly much stronger than she had thought. It seemed like she had made a mistake. Ha, you two thieves. Recently, a dozen or so cultivators suddenly vanished from the face of the earth in the first base. I don't know if they're still alive or dead. You must be the culprit, right? The one-eyed fatty laughed heartily, but this time he spoke in the language of the Central Plains. His only eye was bright and shrewd. He wasn't a fool. He could tell that the two fellows before him were intentionally provoking him to lure him here. Thinking back to the disappearance of the warriors not too long ago, he could already guess what was going on. Die! The one-eyed fatty roared in laughter. Around him, mountains collapsed and tsunamis roared. The air seemed to be stirred up by an invisible force, and as though tons of mud, it charged toward Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka with the might of a thunderbolt. The halo of a true martial realm expert wasn't just for show. It harnessed the laws of nature, allowing one to tap into the power of nature and exert strength far beyond one's own. At this moment, his strength had completely suppressed Mayasame Ayaka and Wang Chong. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time that he activated the halo of Meyer, the one-eyed fatty laughed heartily. With 3 sabers in his hands, he charged toward Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka with the momentum of a thunderbolt. He had intentionally waited for Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka to approach him before activating the halo of swamp. He wanted to catch them off guard and trap them within his power of swamp, preventing them from escaping. For at least 10 breaths, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka wouldn't be able to escape swiftly. 10 breaths were enough to do a lot of things. Pay with your life for the warriors of the empire. The one-eyed fatty seemed to have gone berserk, and his 3 broadswords rained down on Mayasame Ayaka and Wang Chong. In just an instant, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka had fallen into a bitter battle. Be it Mayasame Ayaka's Spectre Steps or Wang Chong's Phantom Steps, they were both outstanding speed-type secret arts. However, the one-eyed fatty's quagmire aura coincidentally countered them. The more powerful a speed-type absolute art was, the faster its speed would decrease when it encountered an external environment that restrained it. For example, if an ordinary person were to fall into a swamp, the most they would be able to do was to shift. On the other hand, if a swift cheetah were to fall into a swamp, its speed would be reduced by a significant amount. This was the situation that Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka were in at the moment. A sharp whistle suddenly sounded from afar. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat. This was the signal that he had agreed upon with the master archer sent by the King of Song. As long as he responded with a sharp whistle, the other party would immediately reinforce him from afar. Given that fellow's strength, there was a high chance that he would severely injure the Goguryeo elite. But Wang Chong didn't want to do so. All master archers were prideful individuals, and the more formidable they were, the more arrogant they were. If he were to fail in his first challenge against a true martial realm opponent, the other party would surely look down on him. As long as he harbored such thoughts, it wouldn't be easy to mobilize him in the future. And Wang Chong still had many opportunities to mobilize him in the future. No matter what, I have to find a way to defeat him first. If I'm not a match for him, it won't be too late to get him to make a move then. Wang Chong thought. The master archer at the rear was an important force in his plan. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Wang Chong didn't want to use him easily. Besides, if he were to make the other party look down on him, it would be fine under normal circumstances. However, if he were to make a mistake in a critical situation where he needed his help, he would lose his life. So, Wang Chong executed the single-character consecutive slash, and by a hair's breadth, he dodged the fatty's 2 consecutive slashes. While dodging, Wang Chong still managed to send out 2 surges of sword chi of massacre, but they were all blocked by the other party's sword chi. The other party's halo of Bog was extremely powerful, and it had an obvious effect on phantom steps. However, Wang Chong didn't just have phantom steps. His single-character consecutive slash was propelled by his origin energy, so it wasn't as affected by the air Bog. On the other hand, Mayasame Ayaka's martial arts were superior to Wang Chong's, but at this moment, the restriction on her was greater than Wang Chong's. Under the control of the one-eyed fatty, the air swamp struck the ground like a heavy mountain, causing rumbling sounds to echo in the air. Mayasame Ayaka staggered, and her body was drenched in sweat. Unable to react in time, the saber chi struck her left shoulder, tearing it apart and tearing a deep gash in it. Fresh blood spurted out from the wound. "Ah, lass, you must be from the Eastern Islands, right? The people of the Central Plains aren't like you." "Hee, once I capture you, I'll bring you back to the base to enjoy myself." The one-eyed fatty roared with laughter. Mayasame Ayaka was both embarrassed and furious. A single mistake had resulted in her being struck once more. "Mayasame, left, 3 Suen below my waist." At this moment, a firm and decisive voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Mayasame Ayaka's mind was in a mess, but upon hearing this voice, it was as if she had been infused with energy, and her mind suddenly cleared up. 3 Suen below my waist? Brat, do you think that you can succeed? Upon hearing Wang Chong's words, the one-eyed fatty's body tensed up as he instinctively felt threatened. But in the next instant he burst into laughter. With his current strength, it was impossible for the two of them to get close to him. Even if they were to discover his weakness, it would be futile. "Brat, your martial arts might not be high, but your movement technique sure is slippery. I was thinking of killing her first before killing you. But since you want to die so badly, I'll grant your wish." The one-eyed fatty's face was savage, and he abruptly turned his head around. Wang Chong's words had roused his killing intent. Even if he had to suffer a few slashes from Mayasame Ayaka, he would kill this fellow who threatened him first. "I would like to see how you're going to stab 3 Suen below my left waist." Hong Long, the world spun. In an instant, a huge amount of muddy air, along with the 3 Gogrian sabers, stirred up a powerful wave of stellar energy and charged toward Wang Chong at lightning speed. This attack was as powerful as a tsunami crashing onto the shore. If he were to be struck, Wang Chong would surely die. In the face of the one-eyed fatty's murderous move, Wang Chong remained standing on the spot, the corners of his lips curling into a cold smile. The reason why he didn't allow the archers to make a move was because he still had a trump card up his sleeves. In the next instant, without any hesitation, Wang Chong released the bane of the battlefield halo. Wang, a formless ripple spread out. There was no movement in the surroundings, but there seemed to be the rumbling of thunder in the depths of the void. Before the one-eyed fatty could react, a strange white ripple appeared around his body. When the white ripples appeared, that unique power exploded in the void. Boom! Without the slightest warning, at least 2/3 of the muddy air that the one-eyed fatso had conjured suddenly exploded. It was a feeling of power being sucked out. Even the yuan qi in the one-eyed fatso's body suddenly stagnated, pausing for a moment. As for the surrounding origin energy of the mud, it was also greatly weakened. The one-eyed fatty was so frightened that his soul left his body, and his entire face turned pale. He had been stationed in the Central Plains for 6 to 7 years now, but he had never encountered such a situation. This kind of situation where his strength was reduced, which he had never experienced before, simply caught him off guard. For his origin energy to suddenly go out of control in the midst of an intense battle, he understood what it meant. It was precisely because of this that his face turned even paler. In a battle between experts, every second counted. Why would there be such a huge opening? This is a good chance. Sensing the change in the surrounding origin energy of the mud, Mayasame Ayaka immediately grasped this rare opportunity. Puchi. Fresh blood splattered as a dagger stabbed 3 inches below the left side of the one-eyed fatty's waist. The dagger had pierced in from one side and came out from the other. Puchi. At the same time, Wang Chong's sword chi of massacre pierced through the right side of the one-eyed fatty's chest. After the sword chi, Wang Chong's phantom movement art reached its maximum speed, and the little yin-yang sword pierced through the one-eyed fatty's heart. Ah! The one-eyed fatty's only eye widened in shock. His hands were still in an offensive stance, and his face was filled with disbelief. Even in death, he didn't understand how he had died. How could such an inconceivable phenomenon occur? Along with the one-eyed fatty's death, a vast surge of origin energy more powerful than any he had felt before flowed into Wang Chong's body through the little yin-yang sword. Ah! Closing his eyes, Wang Chong exclaimed softly. Nourished by this surge of energy, Wang Chong felt his blood boiling. What incredible strength! A true martial realm cultivator was far superior to an origin energy realm cultivator. Wang Chong could feel that the benefits he had received far exceeded any of his previous experiences. The intensity of his origin energy had grown significantly, and the speed at which it flowed had also increased significantly. Even his strength had grown significantly. This was something that Wang Chong's bitter cultivation couldn't compare to. The great yin-yang heaven creation art was known as the #1 cultivation technique in the world, and Wang Chong had already comprehended its profundities. There was no cultivation technique in the world that could raise one's cultivation faster than this. At this rate, I should be able to advance my cultivation to Origin Energy Tier 9 in less than a month. Wang Chong thought. Upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 9, one would be able to externalize one's origin energy, and Wang Chong would be able to cultivate even more advanced martial arts, such as the 100 Steps Divine Fist. Furthermore, upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle, one would be able to comprehend the power of laws, and one would be able to convert origin energy into stellar energy. Every single move of his would produce white ripples, and along with the tremors, the might of his attacks would be enhanced significantly. On the path of martial arts, Origin Energy Tier 1 would be nothing more than a toddler learning to walk. Only upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 9 would one be considered to have reached Origin Energy Major Accomplishment, and only then would one be able to reach higher and stronger realms. Chapter 243. Mayasame Ayaka was keenly aware of the changes in Wang Chong. However, she was smart enough not to ask about it. Gongzi, the situation is getting complicated. It seems like the Gogurians are starting to suspect something. Mayasame Ayaka said with a hint of worry in her eyes. No matter how discreet the two of them were, the Gogurians weren't fools. It would be a wonder if they didn't suspect something when so many of their men had vanished without a trace. Wang Chong discreetly retracted his little yin-yang art, and a dark cloud flashed across his forehead. But very soon, Wang Chong regained his composure. Hee, what's the point of thinking so much? We'll just deal with whatever comes our way. Even if the Gogurians have their suspicions, they don't know how they died or where they died in the city. This is also the reason why I chose to make a move after they left the base. As long as we don't make a move in their base, they won't be able to ascertain whether we have discovered their base or not. In fact, they might even think that it was a coincidence. Wang Chong said. The Gogurians were too confident. They thought that the Tang dynasty wouldn't be able to find them. After all, the Gogurians had always kept a distance between the light and the dark. Those in the light wouldn't do anything that went against the laws of the Tang dynasty. Even if the Tang dynasty sent men to monitor them 24 hours a day, they would only realize that they were the most obedient citizens. On the other hand, those in the dark would disguise themselves as merchants, bodyguards, and so on. They would frequent the taverns, and gambling dens of the Gogurians, and they would try their best not to speak. If they were to speak, they would only speak in the language of the Central Plains. This way, Even if the royal court were to find them, it would be impossible for them to do so. Thus, it would be impossible for them to find their base. This was because their base wasn't in the Gogurian territory in the west of the city. This was what the Gogurians were proud of and confident of. They made full use of the weakness of the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments. However, to Wang Chong, the pride and self-confidence that they had developed over a long period of time was exactly what he could use. No matter how many people he killed, as long as he didn't kill anyone in the base, Wang Chong wasn't afraid that they would find out. Even if they had their suspicions, Wang Chong was not afraid. However, as long as they have doubts, they will be more cautious in the future. In the future, it might not be so easy. Mayasame Ayaka disagreed. The Gogurians wielded great influence in the Central Plains, surpassing all other powers aside from the Tang dynasty. If he didn't have some ability, it would be impossible. So be it. The enemy is out in the open and we are in the dark. Do you think that we can't defeat them with our strength? Don't forget, we also have a lot of trump cards we haven't used yet. Wang Chong smiled. Mayasame Ayaka was taken aback for a moment before understanding his intentions. Indeed, Wang Chong had more than one person on his side. Knowing that Mayasame Ayaka understood his intentions, Wang Chong didn't say anything. Instead, he bent down and searched the one-eyed fatty's body. Very quickly, Wang Chong took out 2 brocade boxes from his body. Each of the 2 brocade boxes contained a 400-year-old golden ginseng. As expected, almost every single one of these Gogurians has a ginseng on them. Even though this wasn't the first time he had encountered such a situation, Wang Chong still couldn't help but be impressed. The wealth of the Gogurians in this aspect was truly unimaginable. Ginseng with several hundred years of maturity was extremely rare in the Central Plains, but almost every single Gogurian had one. As long as one was a Gogurian warrior, Wang Chong would be able to find such ginseng. From this, it could be seen how quickly the Gogurian Empire nurtured experts. Closing the 2 brocade boxes once more, Wang Chong kept the 2 400-year-old ginseng into his robe without any hesitation. Right, Gongzi, what's a Gogurian? All of a sudden, a doubtful voice sounded from the side. Hearing Mayasame Ayaka's voice, Wang Chong staggered and nearly fell to the ground. Mayasame Ayaka, what did you just say? Wang Chong stared at Mayasame Ayaka with a bizarre expression, and he nearly choked on his own saliva. My Gogurian standard isn't high, and I don't know much of the Gogurian language either. I can only recognize a few words, but I don't know what they mean. By the side, Mayasame Ayaka was frowning with a troubled look on her face, as though she was trying very hard to recall. But if I didn't hear wrongly, Gongzi should have said Gogurian, right? What does that mean? Why is that fellow so angry? Is there such a saying in the Central Plains? Mayasame Ayaka was perplexed. When Wang Chong left, he had only said those 4 words, but that one-eyed fatty seemed to have been greatly agitated. Without any hesitation, he immediately chased after Mayasame Ayaka. This had left a deep impression on her. Looking at Mayasame Ayaka's serious expression, Wang Chong felt as if his cancer of awkwardness was about to erupt. His first thought was that Mayasame Ayaka was teasing him, but looking at her expression, Wang Chong knew that he was wrong. She was definitely serious about this matter. How would he know what it meant? In any case, it was a curse from another world. Wang Chong had only picked it up casually, but he didn't expect it to be so useful. That Gogurian stick immediately fell for it without any hesitation. At that time, he was so used that he forgot that there was no such saying in this world. How could such a thing be easily explained? About this, I forgot for a moment that we still have something to do. Well, let's hurry up and go. How could Wang Chong dare to tangle with Mayasame Ayaka? He quickly found an excuse and left. Gazing at Wang Chong's back, Mayasame Ayaka was perplexed for a moment before realization dawned on her, and her lips curled up into a smile. While Wang Chong was planning to hunt down the Gogurian warriors in the capital, on the other side, the debate regarding Zhangzhou Jianqiong had reached its climax. After a month of silence, a famous minister of the Tang dynasty, the eldest son of Duke Jiao, and an influential official of the Tang dynasty, Wang Zhen, expressed his full support for Zhangqiu Jianxiong to take over the position of Minister of War. This was the first time an influential official of the royal court had expressed his support for Zhangqiu Jianxiong. The matter of Zhangqiu Jianxiong being promoted to the capital and becoming the ruler of the royal court had been thought to be hopeless for more than a month. However, Wang Zhen's stance had turned the situation around, and the situation had taken a turn for the better. As everyone knew, as an influential official of the royal court, Wang Zhen had always been cautious in his actions, and he rarely took the initiative to express his stance before the situation was clear. As such, Wang Zhen's statement had caught the attention of many. It was believed that he represented the stance of the entire Wang clan and the king of Song. Ever since Duke Jiao abdicated, the Wang clan's influence had waned. However, after the regional commander's incident, no one dared to look down on the Wang clan anymore. No one dared to look down on them. On the contrary, in everyone's view, not only did the Wang clan's influence not decline after the regional commander's incident, it even reached an even higher level of prestige. In fact, it was even greater than when Duke Jiao was still on the throne. This was because the Wang clan had won the respect of a group that they had never won before. The military. Even though Duke Jiao had led troops and fought in battles, he had never been a proper soldier. As such, when Duke Jiao was still on the throne, he had only won the respect of a small portion of the military. However, the regional commander system had allowed the Wang clan to win the respect of almost all of the Han generals. As such, Wang Zhen's stance was not to be underestimated. On top of that, with the existence of the king of Song, the Wang clan had become a powerful faction that no one dared to underestimate. The fact that Zhangqiu Jianxiong was able to win the support of this group changed the situation. Yang Zhao has indeed made a move. With the Wang clan's help, there's a 60% chance that I will be able to enter the central court. It seems like I didn't help them in the regional commander's incident in vain. In the distant Annan Protectorate manor, Zhangqiu Jianxiong was dressed in heavy armor. A bonfire burned in front of him as he looked at the letter he had received from the north and laughed heartily. Soldiers are nurtured for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. Regardless of whether it was Yang Zhao or the Wang clan, it was finally time for him to reap the fruits of his labor. Congratulations, General. Hearing Zhangqiu Jianxiong's words, a huge commotion broke out in the surroundings. The elite soldiers and commanders knelt down one after another, lowering their heads to the ground. They were overjoyed for Zhangqiu Jianxiong. Zhangqiu Jianxiong hadn't returned empty-handed after several decades at the borders. After serving as the Annan Protector General for so many years, Zhangqiu Jianxiong had gathered a large group of loyal and powerful experts. Every single one of these people before him was willing to die for him. Furthermore, every single one of them was a tycoon who could shake an entire region. This was what he was truly proud of. With these people, he would be able to secure his position even if he were to head to a place like the capital. He wouldn't just be the Minister of War in name only, just like some of his predecessors. Xinyu Zhongtong, after I retire, the position of Annan Protector General will be yours. You should make some preparations as well. After some time, we'll head to the capital together. If you wish to succeed as the Annan Protector General, there are some people you can't afford to not get acquainted with. These people will be of great help to you in the future. As he spoke, Zhangqiu Jianxiong suddenly turned around to look at a brawny man with an honest face and a full beard. This man had a well-built body, and he was dressed in the attire of a general. He knelt on the ground with a serious expression on his face. Yes, Lord. Xinyu Zhongtong knelt on the ground and said seriously. Zhangqiu Jianxiong nodded in satisfaction. Xinyu Zhongtong didn't have many strong points. His only strong point was that he was loyal and reliable. He was able to faithfully and perfectly carry out any of the strategies he had arranged. He was the classic example of a general who defended what he had won. As long as nothing happened in Jiannan, Xinyu Zhongtong was more than qualified to become the Annan Protector General. More importantly, Xinyu Zhongtong was his subordinate. As long as the Annan Protectorate was under his control, the 180,000 elite soldiers stationed in Jiannan would be under his control. This would be his greatest asset in the Bureau of Military Personnel. Chapter 244. Haha, the Wang clan has really stepped forward. In the royal palace, Yang Zhao's hands were trembling in excitement as he read the news he had just received. This time, Zhangqiu Jianxiang will really be promoted to the position of Minister of War. Little sister, we will no longer be helpless in the royal palace. Zhangqiu Jianxiang was the talk of the royal court, and the one who would benefit in the end was also Zhangqiu Jianxiang. However, there was one person who was even more excited than Zhangqiu Jianxiang, and that person was Yang Zhao. As long as Zhangqiu Jianxiang enters the royal court, I, Yang Zhao, will be able to rise to the top and become a high official. Yang Zhao clenched the letter in his hands so tightly that the veins on the back of his fists were bulging. As the saying went, a call to the skies, the people will respond, and Yang Zhao was currently in a state where no one would respond. He wanted a high position and a generous salary, but Yang Zhao knew that his qualifications were too shallow. Every single one of those bigwigs in the royal court had probably investigated him thoroughly. Only by helping Zhangqiu Jianxiang to the throne would he truly be able to rise to the top. Cousin, it seems like that little brother of yours has already stepped in to help us. At least it wasn't in vain that we helped him back then. A pleasant voice, reminiscent of a pearl falling on a jade plate, sounded from behind him. It was Consort Taizhen's voice. Hee, isn't that right? Hearing Consort Taizhen's words, Yang Zhao couldn't help but chuckle. Back then, when I was in dire straits, everyone in the gambling den mocked me. Yet, he gave me 1,000 gold taels without even asking a single question. For him to possess such boldness and means at such a young age, his future is bound to be limitless. Later on, when I learned that he was Duke Jiu's grandson, I was even more certain of this. Little sister, you should be able to feel this more vividly than me. Seated on the golden couch, Consort Taizhen couldn't help but chuckle upon hearing those words. Wang Chang's 3 poems had established her reputation as the #1 beauty in the palace. Even this reputation had slowly spread out of the palace along with the 3 poems. Consort Taizhen naturally knew this better than anyone else. Although Consort Taizhen was quite confident in her beauty, sometimes, beauty wasn't enough to make her the most beautiful woman in the world. Cousin is right, but I haven't seen him yet. Consort Taizhen chuckled, and her tone became much gentler. Consort Taizhen had special feelings for this young man from the Wang clan, who had expressed his admiration for her in the poem, caused a huge uproar in the court, and was even imprisoned in the imperial prison. It wasn't love, but she did have a good impression of him. It was completely different from how she looked at other youths. Hee, this fellow is currently in the training camp. If little sister wants to see him, there will be plenty of opportunities. Yang Zhao recalled the few times he had met Wang Chong, and his heart was filled with emotions. It's a pity that the Wang clan is too powerful. Otherwise, I would really want to pull him over. However, it's good that he's around. With the strength of the Wang clan and the King of Song, as well as Zhangqiu Jianxiang's arrival, little sister, you won't be alone in the palace anymore. Yang Zhao said happily. Consort Taizhen nodded and nodded in agreement. A step too late. Yao Guangyi slammed his fists onto the table with a livid expression. He had been trying his best to rope in Yang Zhao and Consort Taizhen. Zhangqiu Jianxiang was one of the opportunities he had been trying his best to win over. But he didn't expect the Wang clan to beat him to it. Zhangqiu Jianxiang was an outsider, and a ferocious dragon crossing the river posed a threat to all of the hegemons in the river. This was also the reason why no one stood up for him despite the long dispute over Zhangqiu Jianxiang. Everyone had chosen to remain silent on this matter. The Wang clan had been silent for a long time, so Yao Guangyi had always thought that they were against it. They were afraid that Zhangqiu Jianxiang would come to the capital. But he didn't expect Wang Zhen to stand up so decisively. I've been fooled by them. Veins were popping on Yao Guangyi's forehead, and his complexion was awful. How could he not understand that he had been hoodwinked by the Wang clan? If the Wang clan had openly supported Zhangqiu Jianxiang from the start, everyone in the capital would have surely opposed them. But now, not only did no one criticize them, Zhangqiu Jianxiang even owed him a huge favor. He was just a step too slow, and he had lost this opportunity forever. Zhangqiu Jianxiang would remember the first one who supported him, but he wouldn't care too much about the second or third. Such decisiveness definitely isn't Wang Zhen's style. Wangchou. It must be that lad again. Killing intent surged in Yao Guangyi's eyes. I was still a step too slow. Yao Guangyi wasn't the only one sighing. In a residence in the center of the capital, a slender figure sighed as he slowly put down the letter in his hands. Wang Chong was oblivious to the changes in the royal court. At this moment, Wang Chong's attention was completely focused on killing the Goguryeo warriors. Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka worked together to hunt down these targets. The death of every true martial realm Goguryeo warrior would provide Wang Chong with a large amount of origin energy. In a short period of time, Wang Chong had killed a large number of true martial realm experts, and his strength had risen to a whole new level. His strength, speed, and dexterity had all increased significantly, and he wasn't too far off from reaching Origin Energy Tier 9. Unknowingly, another 3 to 4 days passed. Deep in the night, the winds howled, and the surroundings were sparsely populated. At the border of the capital, where few people could be seen, a figure dressed in a robe walked slowly. Judging from his appearance, he was dressed like someone from the Central Plains. However, his walking posture was a little awkward, and one could tell that he was a little unnatural. Boom! Just as that person walked to a lush maple tree by the side of the road, boom! A cold gleam flashed, and as though a bolt of lightning, a sword gleam struck the top of that person's head. At the same time, close to the ground, a pitch-black silhouette of a sword pierced toward the back of that person's waist as though a venomous snake. The two figures moved in tandem with one another, and they seemed to have a tacit understanding of one another. Boom! In the instant that he was ambushed, the person didn't panic. Instead, he pulled out his sword with both hands. At the same time that he drew the sword, a ring of light shot out, and a majestic torrent of energy swept out mightily, covering the heavens and the earth. Boom boom boom. Stellar energy clashed with a sword, but the only sound it produced was the clash of swords against swords. In fact, one could even vaguely hear sparks flying in the air. It was as if the surging torrent was not formless and formless stellar energy, but a saber-shaped sword. Halo of sharpness. Upon mastering this halo, one's stellar energy would become as sharp as swords. This Goguryeo warrior was executing this halo of sharpness, and it was also a variant halo of the true martial realm. Under the collision of the halo and the 3 consecutive slashes, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka were forced to retreat. Haha, I wasn't wrong. You really took the bait. That person didn't pursue them. Instead, he pointed a saber at Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka and laughed heartily, as though his scheme had succeeded. Gongzi, it's a trap. Mayasame Ayaka's eyes narrowed upon hearing the other party's words. She immediately sensed that something was amiss. Ah, not bad. It's indeed a trap. But it's a pity that it's too late. Come out. That person exerted strength at his waist, and with a chi-la sound, his clothes were torn apart, revealing a Goguryeo warrior's attire. At the same time, he waved his hands grandly. Walala, 3 figures immediately rushed out from the forest and surrounded Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka. These 3 people were all experienced true martial realm experts, and each of them carried a powerful aura. Even one of them was enough to make Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka worry for a long time. Now that the 4 of them had appeared together, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka were immediately placed in a disadvantageous position. I'm just the bait, and they are the real attack. Since you can't even defeat me, you won't be a match for them. Hee, no matter what you do now, the only thing awaiting you is death. That person laughed heartily as a sinister glint flashed in his eyes. As the experts of the second base, they reacted much faster than the others. The sudden disappearance of a true martial realm expert wasn't a small matter. Almost immediately, they realized the severity of the matter. Even though they couldn't confirm the truth, they still quickly came up with a plan. The 4 of them formed a group, with 1 in the open and 3 in the shadows. The one in the open was the bait. This way, they could probe the other party's strength, and at the same time, they could keep an eye on one another to prevent any problems from arising. Just that, the man didn't expect them to be so lucky. It had only been a few days, and they had already encountered a bait. Hee, to dare to play tricks before us, you're just asking for it. Once we capture you, I'll see for myself what your background is and who's behind you all. The man laughed heartily as he stared at Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka as though they were already corpses. Gongzi, what do we do now? Cold sweat seeped out of Mayasame Ayaka's eyes. Regardless of whether it was in terms of strength or numbers, these people had the upper hand. With their strength alone, it was impossible for them to defeat so many people. Don't worry, there's no need to worry. Wang Chong replied with a relaxed expression. Go, capture them all. If any problems arise, it's fine even if we kill them. He could only hear the voices of the two people in his ears. Panglong. As though announcing Wang Chong's death, the man waved his hand, and 3 true martial realm experts of the Goguryeo Empire, along with him, gathered 3 powerful stellar energy torrents. Before these stellar energy torrents, even Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka's origin energy paled in comparison. Yi. Without any hesitation, the moment the 4 of them drew their sabers, Wang Chong let out a deafening howl. Go! This howl wasn't directed at Mayasame Ayaka, but someone in the distance. Panglong. Without any hesitation, Wang Chong immediately released his Bane of the Battlefield halo. Chapter 245. The Bane of the Battlefield. Wang Chong was getting more and more familiar with the usage of this halo, and he was getting better and better at grasping the timing of its execution. Before the 4 Goguryons could react, their auras suddenly froze, as though they had been bound by a layer of iron, and their fighting prowess fell by a notch. At this moment, 800 meters behind them, a figure suddenly moved. Boom! A ferocious gale burst forth like a bolt of lightning, splitting the world and splitting the world apart. Hong Long, a silhouette flashed in midair, and a thick arrow pierced through the air, piercing through the chest of a Goguryeon. The immense force of the arrow pushed him more than a dozen zhang away, pinning him firmly to the ground. Not only so, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th arrows also pierced through the bodies of the other 2 true martial realm Goguryeon experts, sending them flying. Even the powerful torrent of stellar energy of true martial realm experts couldn't withstand it for even a second. With just a single touch, the stellar energy shattered. Putting aside Mayasame Ayaka, even Wang Chong was shocked speechless. He knew that the King of Song had sent an expert to deal with him, but this was the first time he realized that the other party's archery had reached such a formidable level. With 4 people and 4 arrows, Wang Chong didn't even have to lift a finger. Gongzi, that person is powerful. Mayasame Ayaka muttered with deep fear in her eyes. She had come into contact with that reticent master archer several times, but she didn't know that he was actually so fearsome. That speed and strength left her goosebumps all over, and her hair stood on end. Too fast. It was really too fast. It was so fast that there was no time to dodge at all. The moment the arrow sounded, it would be the sound of death. Mayasame Ayaka was also a speed-type assassin, but that archery was created for the sake of death. Even she wouldn't be able to dodge it. Being aimed at meant death. Don't worry. Seeing how Mayasame Ayaka was behaving like a mouse before a cat, Wang Chong patted her shoulder and chuckled. Mayasame Ayaka was an assassin, so it was only natural for her to react to such an expert. However, Wang Chong was different. He's an expert on our side. With such a powerful expert here, what are you worried about? If there's anything to worry about, it's the enemy who needs to worry. This was the first time that Wang Chong had used the power of the sharpshooter. Wang Chong was very satisfied with the expert that the King of Song had sent to him. This expert sent by the King of Song has been with me for a long time, but I've never used him. He must have been holding back his anger, so this time, he deliberately showed off his archery skills in front of me. Wang Chong laughed in his heart and did not mind. That person had a very good grasp of the situation. All 4 of them were heavily injured and on the verge of death, which made it convenient for him to use the little yin-yang art. The saber and sword entered Xiao Chen's body, piercing deep into his heart. A vast essence current surged into his body like the roar of a flood dragon. The nature of the energy harnessed within a true martial realm expert was much higher. Taking in this surge of origin energy, Wang Chong felt his blood boiling, and he felt as though he was going to roar out loud. Long. Wang Chong had already absorbed a huge amount of origin energy over the past few days, and now that he had absorbed the origin energy of the Gogrian expert, the origin energy in his body flowed at a speed that was several times faster than before. At the same time, the little yin-yang art in his body jolted, and it was at this moment that it broke through the first and second realms, forming an even greater cycle. Gongzi is about to reach origin energy tier 9. Mayasame Ayaka's eyelids twitched as she stared at Wang Chong's back. She was extremely sensitive to the changes in Wang Chong's aura. The aura emanating from Wang Chong's body was bubbling, as though a boiling volcano. Furthermore, it was getting denser and denser with each passing step. This was a sign that he was about to release his origin energy and form the embryonic form of stellar energy. It hasn't been too long since Gongzi reached origin energy tier 8, and yet, he's already on the verge of reaching origin energy tier 9. This is inconceivable. Mayasame Ayaka's eyebrows twitched. She wasn't someone who lacked knowledge and experience. However, what was happening to Wang Chong was something that she had never seen or heard of before. What Wang Chong was doing had already surpassed the limits of her understanding. Just a little more. After dealing with the first Gogrian expert, Wang Chong soon walked up to the second one. He could already feel that there was an invisible barrier in front of him, and he would soon break through this barrier. The little yin-yang sword pierced into the body of the second Gogrian expert, and Hong Long. As if reaching some sort of trigger, as the surge of origin energy gushed into Wang Chong's body, his body seemed to have turned into an invisible furnace. When the pressure reached its limit, it suddenly burst forth. Boom boom boom. Wang Chong's Laoxin acupoint, Yongquan acupoint, Jianjing acupoint, Mingmen acupoint, Fengqi acupoint. A total of 16 Xianmen acupoints were opened one after another. As soon as these 16 acupoints were opened, a blood-red mist immediately gushed out, shrouding Wang Chong within it. In that instant, Wang Chong felt as if his body weight had been reduced significantly, and he had become much lighter than before. His speed, strength, and dexterity seemed to have been reborn in an instant, increasing by twofold in an instant. The current Wang Chong was at least twofold stronger than before. External release of inner energy. I've really reached the level of external projection. Sensing the changes in his body, Wang Chong felt the 108,000 pores on his body opening up in delight. Raising one's origin energy from tier 8 to tier 9 was a qualitative change. Upon reaching this realm, one's flesh, blood, bones, and meridians would undergo a massive growth. This was the first qualitative change in a martial artist's body, and it was known as minor qualitative change. During this process, one's strength would rise by twofold to twofold. To a martial artist, this minor qualitative change was an extremely important opportunity. In his previous life, Wang Chong had experienced this surge in strength, but this was the first time he was experiencing it. Furthermore, the growth was even greater than in his previous life. Upon reaching origin energy tier 9, one could already be considered as an origin energy expert. Among ordinary martial artists, one could be considered as one of the top existences. Wang Chong closed his eyes. A moment later, he opened them once more, and a brilliant radiance shot out from them. At this moment, Wang Chong raised his palm, and before Mayasame Ayaka's astonished gaze, a snow-white light burst forth and struck a tree 100 meters away. Hong Long, the tree trunk exploded, and the leaves scattered. Amidst a cloud of dust and wood shavings, the 10-meter-tall tree fell to the ground. This is... Looking at the fallen tree, a thought flashed across Mayasame Ayaka's mind. She vaguely recalled something, but she couldn't believe it. 100 steps divine fist. 800 meters away, that mysterious man, who was like a towering mountain hidden in the darkness, slowly put down his bow and arrow. As he gazed at Wang Chong's back, a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. To be able to exert origin energy with a single punch and strike a distance of 100 steps away, this was something only the 100 steps divine fist, was capable of. Even though it couldn't be compared to a true martial realm secret art, it was definitely a legendary secret art in the origin energy realm. Even the master archer had only heard of it. He had never seen anyone cultivate it before. Those who knew this secret art were as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. For Wang Chong to be able to execute a legendary secret art like the 100 Steps Divine Fist, despite having just reached Origin Energy Tier 9 just a moment ago, it was truly shocking. Where did this child learn so many secret arts at such a young age? In the darkness, the master archer narrowed his eyes. For the first time, he was curious about the young man whom the King of Song had chosen. At least I'm not rusty with it. From afar, Wang Chong stared at his masterpiece and slowly retracted his fist. Nodding his head in satisfaction, he was satisfied with the effect of the punch. The 100 Steps Divine Fist was a legendary secret art, and only a handful of people knew of it. Furthermore, most of them valued it highly, so there were even fewer people who knew it. However, to Wang Chong, this legendary secret art meant nothing at all. After all, it just so happened that he knew this secret art. The 100 Steps Divine Fist sounded mysterious, but in truth, it was just a unique technique to utilize one's origin energy after one had reached Origin Energy Tier 9. The process of gathering one's origin energy was extremely complicated, and it required a lot of skill. Only when one's origin energy was gathered and compressed to a certain level could one release it, and at that point, one would be able to unleash immense destructive power. This was a technique that didn't increase one's cultivation. Thus, it wasn't too difficult for one to grasp the technique. The only problem was that this technique was extremely taxing on one's origin energy. Even an origin energy pinnacle expert would only be able to execute more than a few of the 100 Steps Divine Fist. Thus, unless it was absolutely necessary, one wouldn't use it easily. Practice makes perfect. I'll have to practice this technique more in the future. Wang Chong said to himself as he analyzed the usage of the 100 Pacer God arrow. This secret art allowed one to glide over a long distance, and 100 steps was still relatively easy for one to dodge. Thus, it wasn't that easy to hone one's technique. However, the might of the 100 Steps Divine Fist was truly astounding. Having just achieved a breakthrough to Origin Energy Tier 9, Wang Chong's body was still a little weak. This was a sign that his origin energy was lacking. Following which, without any hesitation, Wang Chong killed the remaining 2 true martial realm Gogrian warriors. With the nourishment of their origin energy, Wang Chong's strength soared, and his cultivation immediately stabilized. Let's go! After finding 4 superior Gogrian ginsengs from the corpses of the 4, Wang Chong gestured for his men to leave. The men monitoring the Gogurian second base sent over a signal that the Gogurians had made a move. The expert sent by the King of Song was simply too powerful. This was also the reason why Wang Chong didn't use him easily. Shwa shwa shwa. In just a short moment, Wang Chong and the others swiftly left. Even the battlefield was cleaned up. All traces of the battle were swept clean. Even the tree that Wang Chong had broken was moved away. Chapter 246. Buns, freshly made buns. Fresh and delicious, I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Early in the morning, the capital's Jade Dragon Street was filled with people walking to and fro. Crowds of people walked in and out of restaurants, tea shops, and bun stalls. On the east side of Jade Dragon Street, amidst the steam from the buns, the signboard of a restaurant could be vaguely seen. Royal Jade Restaurant. The 3 words were painted in gold on a black background, and it looked rather elegant. The signboard had been changed this morning, and the owner of the restaurant had changed along with the signboard. But other than the owner of the restaurant, the waiters and chefs had all remained the same. Thus, most people were unaware that the owner of the restaurant had changed. Even if some people noticed the change in the signboard, they didn't think too much of it. And at this very moment, Wang Chong was in this very same Royal Jade Restaurant. In the best private room on the 2nd floor of the Royal Jade Restaurant, several burly men from the Zhuang clan and Qi clan were seated on the floor, wolfing down their food. There were already dozens of steamers on the floor, but there were even more steamers stacked on top of each other on the table. The cavalry of the Zhuang clan and the steel guards of the Qi clan were famous, but this was the first time anyone had witnessed their frightening appetite. It's about time. Leaning against the railing, Wang Chong slowly ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. It had been a few days since the last operation, and Wang Chong hadn't done anything in the past few days. All he did was cultivate in this very royal jade restaurant. Dong dong dong. A series of knocks sounded from outside. "Come in," Wang Chong said calmly without turning his head. The door to the private room was pushed open, and the black-robed Mayasame Ayaka walked in with a steamer of steaming buns. "Gongzi." Mayasame Ayaka knelt down and placed the steamer in front of Wang Chong. Then she took out a pair of chopsticks and carefully wiped them clean before handing them over. "How is it?" Wang Chong took the black jade chopsticks and placed a soup bun into his mouth. The soup dumplings were very soft and very thin. With a light bite, a thick broth seeped into the mouth. It was fresh and fragrant, overflowing from the lips and teeth. After swallowing it from the mouth to the stomach, there was a comfortable feeling. Not bad. Wang Chong nodded in satisfaction. After eating in so many restaurants and tea houses, Wang Chong still felt that the soup dumplings here were the best. There was an important reason why Wang Chong had chosen this restaurant out of all the restaurants in the capital. As for the other reason, this was also because Wang Chong really needed a restaurant of his own. It was too ostentatious and inconvenient to visit other people's restaurants and shops in the capital. As time passed, it would inevitably attract the attention of others. If he had his own restaurant, it would be very convenient for him to eat or cultivate. At the very least, it would be very convenient in terms of deceiving others. This was similar to how the Yao clan bought the vast crane pavilion. The latter had always left a deep impression on Wang Chong. Sometimes, buying a restaurant of one's own couldn't be measured by money alone. "Gongzi, our actions have already caught the attention of the Gogurians." At this moment, not only the first base of the Gogurians, but even the second and third bases are also on high alert. It seems like the Gogurians are starting to get suspicious of us. Kneeling on the floor, Mayasame Ayaka reported respectfully. Even when she had no choice but to appear beside Wang Chong, she made sure to make use of the lighting in the room, barriers, screens, and railings to conceal herself so as to not draw the attention of others. This was almost an instinct of an assassin. The Gogurians aren't lacking in experts. At the very least, that King Sojurim isn't someone easy to deal with. After killing so many people, even if others don't suspect us, he will. Wang Chong said impassively as he picked up another soup dumpling and placed it into his mouth. His expression was calm and relaxed, as though everything was going according to his plan. However, won't there be a problem with this? King Sojurim isn't a benevolent person. He even dared to assault the 3 great training camps. If we were to attract his attention, it might be disadvantageous to us. Mayasame Ayaka said worriedly with a frown. In the territory of the Tang dynasty, King Sojurim was a legend. His schemes were meticulous, and he was vicious and daring. Yet no one knew what he looked like. This meant that even if he were to pass by you, you wouldn't be able to tell what he looked like. You wouldn't even know when he killed you. Don't make him sound so terrifying. In the end, he's just a human. It's just that we haven't seen what he looks like before, that's why we're so suspicious of him. Wang Chong swallowed the soup dumpling and waved his hands nonchalantly. Mystery came from the unknown, and the same went for fear. Wang Chong knew that King Sojurim was well versed in this matter. However, this also showed that he was fearful of him. Just like how assassins couldn't be seen in public, King Sojurim was the same as well. If they knew what King Sojurim looked like, they wouldn't be so fearful of him. Furthermore, have you forgotten about the warriors he brought over from Goguryeo? He has spent so much time and effort on them, and he must be up to something. At this moment, he doesn't have the time to bother with us pawns. Wang Chong paused for a moment before continuing. Besides, this might actually be a good thing. We might be able to alarm him and force him to hurry up. The reason why Wang Chong didn't make a move for the past few days was so that the Goguryans wouldn't be able to figure out his movements. This way, they wouldn't be able to fathom his movements and feel uneasy. As long as they felt uneasy, they would surely find a way to hasten their movements. As the saying went, mistakes are made in the midst of a rush. Once one's movements were rushed, it would be easy for one to leave behind a flaw. Mayasame Ayaka frowned and fell into deep thought. She seemed to be contemplating the meaning behind Wang Chong's words. Wang Chong chuckled and ignored her. Picking up a soup bun with his chopsticks, he stuffed it into his mouth. He didn't feel anything after cultivating for an entire night. But now that he was done cultivating, he felt a surge of hunger in his stomach. While eating the soup bun, Wang Chong continued his cultivation of the Art of Life Massacre. In the past 3 days, Wang Chong didn't do anything else but study the Art of Life Massacre. At the start, this secret art was as thin as a spider's thread. When Wang Chong left the mountain, he had only cultivated it to the thickness of a finger. But now, thanks to the abundant origin energy he had absorbed, Wang Chong's sword chi of life massacre had grown to the width of 4 fingers. His movements were majestic, reminiscent of a rainbow. Furthermore, thanks to his origin energy tier 9 ability to expel his inner chi, Wang Chong was able to execute sword chi of life massacre without using a sword, and its might wouldn't be reduced in the slightest. I can be considered a swordsman now. Wang Chong thought as he took a bite of the soup bun. In his previous life, Wang Chong used a spear, and this was the first time he was becoming a swordsman. Even though he was only a basic swordsman, he was already a swordsman. Furthermore, he had stepped onto a completely different path from his previous life. Elder Su swordsmanship is known as the #1 in the world. Even though it's only the first layer of sword chi, it's already sufficient to break through the stellar energy of a true martial realm expert. However, this isn't sufficient. The first layer of Art of Life Massacre has a total of 9 revolutions, and the expansion and contraction of sword chi form 1 revolution. Only after reaching the 9th revolution can it be considered as the true sword chi of Life Massacre. I haven't even reached the 1st revolution yet, so I have to continue working hard. Tilting his head upward, Wang Chong subconsciously knocked on the table with his left hand as thoughts flashed through his mind. The Art of Life Massacre's sword chi started off as thin as a gossamer. As one's strength grew, the sword chi would continuously grow thicker and its power would also increase. When it reached the point of withering, it would begin to shrink, compressing the sword chi. When the sword chi turned from thick to thin, becoming the size of a spider's web again, it would be called the 1st revolution. After that, it would be the 2nd revolution, the 3rd revolution. The power of the sword chi was directly proportional to the number of revolutions. The higher the revolutions, the more powerful it would be. And after reaching the 9th revolution, it would be almost invincible, and nothing would be able to stop it. Even if one didn't have a sword in hand, it wouldn't make any difference to the 9th revolution sword chi of Life Massacre. However, the higher the revolutions, the harder it would be to cultivate. Furthermore, as the revolutions increased, the color of the sword chi would also change. This was all slowly figured out by Wang Chong as he tried to figure out the mental cultivation method of the Sword of Life Massacre. Currently, Wang Chong was still at the stage of the half-revolution. However, even this half-revolution sword chi was able to pierce through metal and crack jade. It was enough to pose a fatal threat to a true martial realm expert. And this was the power of So Young-sun's swordsmanship. Let's go back home and rest for a while. There are some matters that need to be settled. After finishing a steamer of soup dumplings, Wang Chong flicked his sleeves, pushed the table away and stood up. It had been more than half a month since he left the Kanwa training camp. It was time to settle the Wuzi steel weapons that he had accumulated at Tuoba Guiyuan's place. Money flowed like water. No matter how much money he had, it would never be enough. Wang Chong was well aware that there would be more areas where he would need to spend money in the future. Currently, the Wuzi steel weapons were his only source of income. Hey, do you know how to walk? Are you blind? Just as he was about to leave, a commotion could be heard from the streets outside. Wang Chong turned his head and saw a fat merchant and several burly mercenary experts pointing at a disheveled expert of around 40 years of age, his face red as he cursed at him. "How dare you do this to me?" Wang Chong turned his head and saw a fat merchant with several burly mercenaries pointing at a disheveled expert in his 40s. Although the person being scolded looked disheveled, Wang Chong could tell that this person was an expert with just a glance. When he walked, his feet were especially steady. His shoulders did not even sway. Furthermore, it was a completely subconscious action and not intentional. This was a habit that only those who had reached a certain level of martial arts cultivation would form. Martial arts emphasized precision and 100% accuracy. For example, Wang Chong's sword chi had to accurately hit a spider silk that was 10 feet away. As a martial arts expert, one's hands could not shake. When one's cultivation reached a certain level, this would become an instinct. This was not an issue of stability. It was just that those who had cultivated to such a level would have their limbs and body especially stable. They would be like a tree stump that was growing there, completely different from the stability of an ordinary person. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. It was easy to discern a person with a single glance. "He's just asking for trouble." Wang Chong smiled and shook his head, not intending to. The capital was massive, and such conflicts occurred every day. That disheveled middle-aged man was clearly more formidable than the mercenaries of the merchant. The merchant had truly kicked a steel plate. If everything went as expected, this fellow would probably be ruthlessly beaten up. Wang Chong didn't care, nor did he have any intention of interfering. Instead, he began to walk away. However, he had only taken a few steps when something unexpected happened. "Beat him up. Beat him up." "What the hell? You didn't even apologize for knocking me over. There's no need to hold back. Beat him up. If he dies, I'll take responsibility. And I thought that you were formidable, so arrogant and domineering. But it turns out that you're just a weakling." "Pa, trash," the merchant's vicious voice echoed from the street. This time, not only Wang Chong, even Mayasame Ayaka was surprised. The duo turned their heads to look outside. On the wide street, the disheveled middle-aged man whom they thought to be an expert was being pummeled to the ground. Several guards of the merchant had surrounded him, and they were raining punches and kicks on him. On the other hand, the disheveled middle-aged man was just like an ordinary person, unable to put up the slightest resistance. HM? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.